Thank you everyone for finding time to join. My name is Nicholas Outa. I am a research capacity advisor and a trainer at TCC Africa. So basically we train, support, and empower scholars in all aspects of scientific writing and communication. So throughout your academic journey, we could be able to be of assistance. I can see there are people who are not new to this kind of training. So welcome everyone. Today we are going to talk about how to write a research proposal and how to subsequently now write a manuscript for publication. So that I also don't want to make it too long because I know almost everyone has written a proposal or are in the process of writing a proposal of some sort. So it's not like it's a really new concept for every one of us. Today, I think I'm just here to give certain tips that can make your proposal writing journey maybe easier than it already is. I'm not really going into the very little basics that I know everybody knows already. So here it's just about what tips can help you make it easier, and how then can you navigate through certain challenges that you can meet. And then tomorrow we will go ahead now and talk about the various tools. Today is about the structures. How do you write a proposal? What goes into what part? And then after that, after a break, after the break, then we'll talk about how do you write a manuscript? How do you write the different sections of a manuscript? But then tomorrow, I will now be going into training you on what tools now can you use during your writing process. What tools can you use to get papers? What tools can you use for citation? What tools can you use for, summarizing and reading these papers instead of reading them word by word? All that will come tomorrow. But today, I want us to talk about how do you write a proposal and how do you write a manuscript after you have written your proposal, collected data, and analyzed it. So basically, that is what will happen. So we have a bit of an intense day ahead of us, and we purpose to stop by around 1. So mine is just to give you tips. I'm not saying that I'm going to give you all those things, but I know we are all conversant with the basics of, most of us are either doing masters or PhDs, so we are conversant with the basics of scientific writing, like the basics of proposal writing, what it is, what it entails. But we are just going to have a conversation where we talk about what tips can make it, slightly easier. So I will start my presentation. And part of the introduction that I didn't make is that my background in fisheries and aquaculture. So I have a background in fisheries and aquaculture. So the training we are going to do today will not focus on, because we are all from different fields in this training. So I'm not really going to focus on a specific field. So we are going to discuss about the generals, about how do you generally write a proposal, or how do you generally write a manuscript. So it will not focus on a specific field of research per se. So that is one thing I also wanted to get out of the way. So I will share my screen and start with this. So people consider several things when they are going to write a research proposal. But even before we talk about that, why is it important for us to write a proposal? Why is it important? Why don't we just go to the field and start collecting data? Because we already know what we want to do anyway. Why is it important for us to write a research proposal? Why is it important? Maybe one person can unmute and just introduce yourself and tell us why you think it's important for us to write a proposal before we go ahead to collect data. Anyone? Hello? Does somebody want to try?
Hello.
Yes, Melissa.
Yes, thank you very much for this session. Let me just give it a try. Proposal is important to write so that you can know what other scholars have written about the area of your interest in study.
Okay, thank you. Because during proposal, as we are going to see, you are going to review literature, and that will also give you an idea of. Yeah, thank you. So you write a proposal also to demonstrate that indeed there is a gap, because when you go to the field and collect data, you might be assuming there is a gap in research, but then you collect data, come and present, and you are told that last week somebody published this, or there's a student who already is working on this in our department. So how did you collect data and did the same research like he has done? So partly it's just about guidance, and also you are writing proposal, of course, for you to get guidance from your seniors, but it's just a part of organizing yourself. So it's like a planning towards it's like developing a plan towards your data collection. It guides you on what objectives, what kind of data sets you need to collect, so that you don't go to the field and start collecting data blindly. And then you are here with data, it is inadequate, it's not making any sense, and you don't know where to start writing your thesis from. So that is why you write a proposal. But then people also consider so many things when they want to start writing their proposal. So some of them think about their favorite subject of study, or their interests. But most importantly, you really need to think about the hot topic. What is really trending that really needs a bit of attention in my field? Right now in the field of aquaculture, everyone is looking for alternative sources of protein for fish feed formulation, because that is the challenge that is there. In aquaculture, for example, we over-rely on fish meal to formulate as a protein source to formulate fish feeds. So it's like we are using fish to grow fish. And we are now thinking of how then can we get other sources of protein. So people are getting into BSF, like that is black soldier fly. People are getting into earthworms. People are trying and get azola, so many other alternatives. So it's also good to be aware of what is currently the issue that is trending in your field, because then that also makes it very easy for the readers and the people that are going to review your proposal or even your thesis ultimately to relate and know that you know what is happening. You don't want to be collecting data about something that has already been studied and there is really not a gap. Okay, so those are the things you need to consider. But then it means that you also need to do research before you research. So it means that before you go out to the field to collect your data or gather the information, you need to have done your homework. So you need to have done your research. It means you need to have read papers. So you go on the internet. We'll talk tomorrow. I'll show you several places where you can get very good information, very good literature. But the most important thing that I want to pass here is you can't go around trying to write a proposal and trying to put out your idea out there before you do thorough reading and thorough research. So you must read widely within your field to get to understand what is known and what is not known. Sometimes people just read to know what is known, but then that will also help you identify what is not known. And the best place to look for some of this is in the recommendation section, the conclusions and recommendation section of so many papers. Most researchers, after writing their papers, they would say this research only focused on ABCD, but there is a recommendation if research can also be expanded to include these following aspects. So then you can start, checking the different recommendation sections of papers and see, okay, this is what these people are recommending. Is it something that is worth considering? So basically, those are some of the things you need to think about. But then how do you select a research topic? There are so many things. And also don't worry, the recording will be shared. So, and also the notes, I will also share this presentation. So you can also go over it later on. So don't really worry that if I don't mention some of these things, you will still get to read them, because I'll share. We will share this after we will share this the presentation and also the recording. Now, several things that you consider. I'm not going to read all of them, but then you should also, it should not be too broad. So you don't want to tell us that I'm writing on about the effects of or the impacts of climate change on agricultural productivity in Africa, for example. That would be too wide. Somebody would be asking you, that is, climate change itself is so big, and then Africa is also, a very big area. So that would be too general for a proposal. So when you are deciding, decide on something that is very specific, as we will see later on, okay? Then it should also spark your interest. I'm just picking on a few things, then some of them you will still also go and read. And you also need to, the topic should also aim to solve a genuine contextual problem. You remember when I was talking about the problem that we are facing right now in aquaculture is the source of protein, because we are over relying on fish meal. Now, fish meal is expensive, and also because we are also, the amount of fish that we are having is also reducing over time. We are finding it a problem because we are trying to grow fish to address the issues around the low number of fish that we are catching in the lake, but then we are still using that as fish meat to grow fish. Makes no sense. So you need to think about, is this topic trying to solve a genuine contextual problem? Otherwise, you will be told, this is something that is not really bringing anything to the table. Now, there are several questions you need to ask yourself, as you prepare to write your proposal. One is, what is the problem? And I always tell people, I will not even talk about all this. I'll just tell you, when you want to write your proposal, you need to write these things down and answer them. What do you want to do? So if somebody asks you, what is it that you want to do? You need to narrate it in very plain language. Don't start, complicating it at this point. When you are writing your PhD or your master's story, start by answering these questions. What do you want to do? I want to collect data on the causes of teenage pregnancy in Sierra County. Okay, that is what you want to do. Why do you want to do? I want to do it so that I get to understand ABCD. Okay. How will you do it? I will do it by conducting key informant interviews and maybe administering structured questionnaires and doing FGDs with the ladies. Okay, that is the how. Where do you want to do it? I want to do it in Sierra County because of ABCD. Then, so what? So what importance will be the data you are going to collect? So you need to write all that, and it has to make sense to you first before it makes sense to anyone else. So when you want to start writing your proposal, make sure you answer those questions. What do I want to do? What is the problem? How do I want to do it? Why do I want to do it? Where do I want to do it? And sometimes you even talk about who will be part of this, who will be either benefit from it or who will be part of the study. And then, so what? The implication, I've collected my data. What will that have? What will that do? Now, these others you will read, of course, when we share the notes, but then what is the problem? Why should it be studied? Then those are the steps that you take. So the step that you take is selection and statement of the problem, then problem identification, then problem prioritization and justification. You need to prioritize. You could be having several problems in your field right now that are happening, but then you need to prioritize which one do I want to address now, especially one that is, can be contextualized to the current problems that we are facing, for example. So these others you will read, but don't forget to write those down as you try to come up with a proposal idea. What do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? Where do I want to do it? Who will be involved? How? And so what? Make sure you answer those ones, because when you are clear on those ones, you can still now be able to start writing your proposal. These ones you will still read. Now, what are the critical steps? Step one is knowing and analyzing the problem. I think I've talked about this. It is achieved by analyzing the prevailing situation. I've talked about this, and I've given you a very good example of what is happening in the aquaculture space right now, that we are looking at alternative sources of protein. So analyze the situation. What is really prevailing in my field as it is right now? Then this helps you to enable, it enables you to formulate a problem statement. But when you are formulating a problem statement, the tool that is used and the one that will help you is the use of a problem tree. What happens is you have all these problems jumbled up in your head. You know that teenage pregnancy or maybe microbial resistance, if you are in the field of medicine, for example. So microbial resistance is a problem that people are facing right now. And it is maybe because of, people lack awareness or, all these things. The issues around self-medication, where people just go and buy drugs over the counter without proper prescription, and then all people default, and then they don't follow the dosage as so what are those things But then it's all in your head. So you don't know how to organize it into a very nice statement of the problem. When you're writing a statement of the problem, the advice is that you use a problem tree, and problem tree helps you. In the middle, for example, is the problem. So in this case, the problem is microbial resistance. That is the problem that we are having, that there is widespread of it and there are dangers of it. Now, in the middle is microbial resistance, which is the problem that we are solving. But what are the consequences of this? So I want you now to put this in the middle so you can draw it in form of maybe a chart, so you can just be drawing boxes. Now, I would advise that you draw this using a pen rather than maybe just trying to fidget with it on your laptop. So get a piece of paper and a pen and draw these boxes. So in the middle, draw a box and write microbial resistance. That is the problem. Then you can now draw arrows. What are the consequences of microbial resistance, for example, from the literature that you have read? And what are the causes of this? Okay. Now, the causes of this problem and the consequences will help you formulate a very good statement of the problem and justification. The causes of this problem will help you justify, will help you narrate the problem. This is the problem. This is what is causing the problem. In fact, including what is not known, what is the gap, because those gaps are part of the causes of the problem. But then now, the consequences of this problem will help you justify why the study is important. So the study will generate information that will help solve the consequences. So you'll talk about those consequences as the reason why you want to conduct your study. So that is why the problem tree is a very important one. Because if you have it all in your head without putting it down on a piece of paper and trying to link it up, it might become a bit of a challenge. Now, this is an example of a problem tree. So the problem in the middle is what we call is that teenagers do not finish school. So that is the problem that is there. Now, what are the causes and what are the consequences of the effects of this? So the causes is maybe parents do not encourage them, school is not interesting to them, they need to find employment to support their families. And each of these causes could have sub-causes. It's like a tree where you have the roots and then you have what we call the sub-roots. So keep tracing all these causes until you get to a point where you cannot trace it further and then stop there. Then follow the other cause. Follow it all the way. Like the school is not interesting to them. Why is school not interesting to them? Then you find why school is not interesting. Then branch out until you get to a point where you cannot branch out anymore. Then stop it there. There's need for them to find employment to support their families. Why do they need to find other means to support their family? Is it because of poverty, for example? What is causing poverty? So try to link that. Once you are done with the courses, go up and now into the branches, start now linking all these effects. What are the effects of teenagers not finishing school? So then there's difficulty in finding jobs. Then what does that really lead to? Then there's high teenage pregnancy rate. What does that lead to? All that. Now, with all this, you can easily write a very nice statement of the problem because the causes will help you narrate the statement of your problem. And the effects will help you write a justification or your significance of study, okay? Because now you can easily say, yeah, you see, those are the effects. So if I don't do this research, then this and this and this will happen. Or if I do this research, the need for this research is to generate information that will inform policies and stuff like this that can now help address the consequences or the effects of the problem that I'm trying to address. This problem tree is important, so try to use it as much as you can. Even if you have students, I know we have PhD students, or even we have doctors and professors maybe in this forum who are already even guiding students. So sometimes you find a student does not know how to formulate the statement of the problem very well. Make sure you help them to use a problem tree. Just tell them to draw those in a piece of paper. Tell them I want to put the problem in the middle. In the bottom of that problem, I want you to be trying to see what is causing this problem, what is causing the cause, what is causing the cause, how are all these causes related? Write all the causes. Then on top of it, write all the consequences and all the impacts and all the effects of this main problem we talked about. And then after that, come back to me, then I will help you now formulate your statement of the problem. Okay? Now, the statement of the problem, when you are writing it, you make sure that you narrate what the problem is and also tell us. So you need to narrate what the problem is in the society now, the actual problem and the causes of that. And then you need also to tell us the gap that is what is still not known, especially in academia. what happens, most researchers, when they're writing statement of the problem, they end up just narrating that problem, or what the problem is in the society, what is causing it, but without talking about what is in it for us as scholars. Because I'm going to read your proposal as a scholar. I need to ask myself, what is your problem? What is your research trying to bring? What is it that is still not known? That could be a problem, but then maybe everything is known about that problem. It's only that we have not solved it, but everything is already known. So you need to bring it out that, fine, these are the problems, and this is what is known, and this is what is still not studied. And that is what makes my research important. So that would be important. So the first step was identifying and analyzing a problem. The second step is concept mapping. Now, you find that sometimes when students come to me and tell me, Nicholas, I want you to help me formulate, I want you to help me get a topic for my proposal, or a topic for my research. That is not the best way of approaching that. Never approach this by trying to look for a topic or for a title or your proposal title. That will take you ages, because you are trying to look for a set of words. When you are trying to look for a title for your research, you are looking for a set of words, and it's going to limit you, because you want to arrange them in a way that makes sense to you. Don't do that. The title will always come. I want you to go and start thinking about in terms of concepts. That is what we are talking about, concept mapping. I want you to map out the concepts. So think about concepts. Think about potential problems that you want to solve, rather than thinking about a title. Because for a title, you are looking for a sentence, maybe of 20 words, and you want them to be arranged in a certain order so that it makes sense to you. Think about, what do I want to research on? And still, this concept still goes back to what you want to do, how you want to do it, where you want to do it, why you want to do it, and who will be involved, and so what, the implication of that. So this helps you. I want you to think about them in terms of concepts instead of in terms of topics, okay? Now, from the main idea or concept, branch out to show how that main idea can be broken down into specific topics. So the main idea, for example, here is climate change, or the main idea that you are talking about is teenage pregnancy. Then you need to break down and tell us, fine, but the general idea I want to talk about is climate change, or the main idea I want to talk about, I'm thinking about, is teenage pregnancy. But then what specific aspects of teenage pregnancy do you want to think about? Okay, so the questions that you need to ask yourself are, as I said already, the concepts. So what, where, why, who, those are not still going back there. So these are the same things I have talked about when you're mapping out your problem. What do you want to do? Where do you want to do it? Who will be involved? Why do you want to do it? The how is also there. It's maybe not included here, but how is also important. How are you going to do it is very important for you, because you need to also understand how you want to do it. Now, I've also talked about this, that you need to write your master's or your PhD story in a very simple and plain language. Write out what you want to do. Make it as clear as possible, first to yourself and then to other people, okay? So make it very clear. Write a story. What happens is, when you are writing out your proposal, think of it like each objective should be a story on its own. And each objective should be able to stand on itself, on its own, when you are going to publish them. Because we are going to talk about how to write a manuscript ultimately. And part of what we are going to talk about is, how then do I extract a manuscript out of a whole thesis? How many manuscripts can I get? How do I, all that. But then, so I want you to think about each objective, even as you formulate your objectives, I want you to think about each objective as one that can tell a whole story. So when you are writing your PhD story, write a general story of what you want to do. Write it in after answering them in those short forms, try to write it in a coherent manner. Try to write it in a way that you can write it as a story, that my study is about ABCD. I want to do it in this area. This is why I want to do it. This is how I will do it. And then now go down and now start writing mini stories for each objective. So say objective 1 is to determine this, this, and this. So this objective is going to talk about this. Just write each story about each objective, including the data sets you want to collect and how you are going to collect data for each objective. That will help you later on. When you now want to start collecting your data, you can go back to your story and ask yourself, the data that I'm setting to collect from tomorrow, is it really going to help me tell the story that I wanted to tell for the whole PhD or master's, and for each of these objectives, okay? So that is very important. Then you also need, of course, to identify the funding source. So sometimes you are writing a proposal, maybe even at a master's level or even at PhD, but sometimes you are funded by a project. So you're working under a project. So you also need to think about, if I'm working under a project, what are the objectives of this project? Because if I'm funding you, then you have to fit within my objectives. The project would want you to help them answer their project questions. They don't want you to be collecting data on teenage pregnancy while their project is about maybe agricultural productivity, unless you can convince them that there's a link between teenage pregnancy and agricultural productivity, then you can write it. So be careful about, especially when you are tied down to a project. Okay, so the project or whoever is funding you will want you to help them answer also their objectives. So try to make sure you are in line with the objectives of the project. Okay. So we talked about why our proposal is important. So one of them is clarify your idea. It helps you to develop, to plan. It helps you develop good habits because you are already starting to write parts of your thesis already. It also helps you communicate your proposal, your proposed research to get advice from your supervisor and mentors. I think these are things we already know. Okay. What is the reader looking for in your proposal? Let's say they are writing when you are writing a proposal, whoever is going to review your proposal, there are things they are looking for when they are reading your proposal. Okay. One is significance of your proposal, and that goes back to the problem. This problem has to be very clear. When I read your proposal, I don't need to ask so many questions. What is this person trying to address? What problem are they trying to address? No, I want to read your proposal and see that problem. Okay, so I want to see how significant is your proposal. Then the feasibility. You need to convince me that that the research is valuable and it is realistic and achievable within the times that you are going to talk about. You cannot tell me that you want to get to sample the whole of Africa within 1 month, or you want to tell me that you are doing like in the field of aquaculture or any other field. If somebody tells you that they want to run a certain experiment for 2 weeks, and you know that the shortest time that experiment can take is maybe 3 months, when you read that proposal, you just know that this guy does not have an idea what they want to write. So think about that, okay? These are other things that maybe you will go ahead and read more. I don't want to spend most of the time here. These are things we'll read when I share, but then I'll just pick a few of them. One of them is the problem worth studying. So how important is this issue? Are the objectives clearly stated? What contribution to knowledge of the issue will the study make? So these are what the reviewers, whoever is reading your proposal, is looking at to see if it makes sense in the criteria that are here. So these are some of the questions they are asking themselves. And if they answer that maybe your proposal does not answer any of this or does not meet some of these questions, then it will be thrown back to you. Now, if it is for the award of a degree, will the expected research outcome meet the requirements for the degree? Okay, so it means that if you are writing to be awarded for a master's or for a PhD, and whoever is reading your proposal feels like the data sets you are going to collect or the kind of study you are going to do will not be sufficient for a PhD or for a master's or for a degree, then it will be thrown back to you. So those are the things you need to be aware of. Now we want to now get into developing the structure of our proposal. Okay, so I will still remind you of the 3 key elements. What do you want to do? Why do you intend to do it? How will you do it? Where will you do it? Who will be involved? And so what? So what will be the implication of the research that you intend to do? The exact format varies among schools and maybe faculties or even universities. So whatever you're going to discuss here, you are not going to tell somebody that, no, we were told that this section must come before this section. No. Go and ask your faculty. Most universities will have, a guideline on how to develop a proposal. So they will tell you how to edit your proposal and how to format it, the font size, the font type, the spacing, the structure, what comes before what. So whether objectives come before statement of the problem or vice versa. Those ones are the simple problems that the university will help you sort out. So just go to your supervisor or just go to your faculty and ask them how really your proposal should appear. So whatever we are going to talk about today is just a general discussion on what goes into what section, into each section, The order in which those sections appear in your proposal, now that depends on your university. So I'm not really going to force you to stick to a structure if your university is telling you to follow a different format. But basically, these are, so you have the title, the introduction, the statement of the problem, the rationale, justification, the scope and limitation of review of literature. Sometimes it comes after the objectives. All this, we will find them somehow. We all know what goes into this. Depending also on your field, there are fields where you are also going to do the conceptual framework or theoretical framework. In some field, like in my field, we don't do conceptual framework. We don't do conceptual framework. In some fields, you even do both empirical literature review and theoretical literature review in some fields. So those are the differences, but that now depends on your field. Now, let us start developing our proposal. So the first part of the proposal is the title. So the title is the mini abstract of your investigation, or the mini abstract of your proposal, okay? So you need to paint a quick picture of the key ideas, and the word should reflect the focus of your proposal. So you must put the most important words first. So make sure that when you're writing your title, you put the most important words towards the beginning of the title, so that I don't go around looking for that, what is the focus? What does this really, what is this proposal about? I don't want to go around reading the words of your title, and I'm not sure what you are really focusing. So make sure you put the most important words first or towards the beginning. And this is an example. Example one is left-handedness in students and its relationship to learning preferences. Now, title 2 is learning preferences in students and the connection to left-handedness. Now, at first glance, those two titles appear, or they might sound like they're almost similar, but they are not. Okay? Let's read again. The first title is left-handedness in students and its relationship to learning preferences. But the second one is learning preferences in students and the connection to left-handedness. So the project, the title one is focusing on left-handedness, while the second one is focusing on learning preferences. Okay. Now, when you are collecting data for the first title that is talking about left-handedness, we are going to look for people who are left-handed, and then you ask them about their learning preferences. In the second one, you are going to ask people about their learning preferences and then find out whether they are left-handed or not. Okay, so this is what you need to think about when formulating your titles. Make sure that the focus comes towards the beginning, or we want to see what you are focusing on without having to read and thinking about it too much. So this is always a very good example. So whoever is reading them might appear, when you first read these two titles, you might think, those two titles are the same. They are not the same. The first one is talking about left-handedness, is focusing on left-handedness and trying to relate it to learning preferences. So they are going to find out, are you left-handed? So we are going to find all people who are left-handed and just learn about their learning preferences. But in the second one, we are going to go to students and ask them, what are your learning preferences? Then they will talk about all their learning preferences. And then we now find out, we have found all the learning preferences. Now we want to try to link and then ask them, are you left-handed? No, I'm not. Okay. Are you left-handed? Yes. So then we try to correlate. Is there anything is there any relationship between left-handedness and being and their learning preferences? So that is important. Now, in order to develop a clear title, you must be clear about the focus of your research. I can't stress this enough. So make sure that you direct us. Now, the title should be concise and descriptive. Often titles are stated in terms of a functional relationship because such titles clearly indicate the independent and dependent variables. Not always, but often try, if there's a way you can bring it a way that I can be able to say, okay, this guy is just trying to look for the relationship between this and this, or trying to look at the impacts of this on this, or trying to correlate, so try to make it in a way that I can be able to see that, okay, this one is the independent and this one is dependent variable. Think of an informative but catchy title. An effective title not only piques the reader's interest, but also predisposes him or her favorably towards your proposal. So if you write a title that is easy for me to understand and get to understand and know your focus, then already favorably, I'm already predisposed favorably to your title, to your proposal, of course. So when I'll read it with a kind of with a little bit of some softness, so to speak. Okay, but if I'm struggling to find even what you are going to study or what your focus is, then it becomes very difficult for me when I'm reading your proposal. I'm going to be a bit, not lenient on your, I'll be a bit hard on you on your title. Okay. Now, then after the title, of course, we have the other rubrics, depending on the proposal. Sometimes after the title, we will always have the other things about the university, the other rubrics about the university, and then you'd have an abstract, for example, that now summarizes everything. And then we have the introductory and background of the study. Okay. Now, the introduction or the background of the study provides the necessary background or context for your research problem. Now, you need to place, how do you say, when you are writing your background, the background, just as the word says, the background needs to give us an idea of where, how did we get to where we are right now? Where did this problem start? We are talking about teenage pregnancy, for example. You need to paint a picture of what happened for us to be where we are in the background. So you need to bring it about, we need to get a broader context of what is happening so that we get to understand why. Let's say you are doing the issues around microbial resistance and you are doing a case of let me use Nairobi County as an example. So you are going to these hospitals and trying to see where the documentation that has happened around that specific problem. And you need to, when you start talking about microbial resistance in Nairobi in the background, directly without telling us what microbial resistance is, what the problems are associated with it, what the statistics are in the world right now, what statistics do we have in Africa, for example, what statistics do we have in the region, try to bring the broader context so that we get to now, so that when you finally settle to Siaya County or when you finally settle to Nairobi County, we understand how you have mapped this out and you brought us to speed with what happened for us to be where we are right now. Okay? So make sure that when you start broadly. So you try to place your research question in the context of an entire or either a current hot topic or an older area that remains viable. So maybe in your field, there is an older area that people studied, but not a lot was done. Or something was done already, but maybe the methods that were used that time have been updated. So you want to think about, okay, this is not a new one, but I am bringing new thinking into it. Now, secondly, you need to provide a brief but appropriate historical backdrop. That is very important. I want in your background to bring a bit of some historical backdrop to the problem you are addressing. Okay. Thirdly, provide the contemporary context in which your proposed research question occupies the central stage. In short, try to paint your research question in broad brushes and at the same time bring out its significance. Okay. So when you are talking about this, we want you to bring out how, the contemporary context in the contemporary world or in the current situation, where does your research fit? You've given us the background. You've given us a bit of a historical background. Let's say, for example, we are talking about the dwindling stocks, fish stocks in Lake Victoria, for example. We need to get an idea of, what were the catches in the 80s, for example, in the 70s. Progressively, how has that gone down over time? What are the problems? What are the potential causes of this? Why has this been happening? Now, what impacts has this had on the communities and people and all that? So that when we now start talking about right now, this is the catches that are being reported at the beaches, and this is the problem that is now people are facing because of the reduction. We get to understand the historical background before you bring it to the current contemporary world. The introduction generally covers the following elements. So this is just a summary of the elements that the introduction, basically, or your background of the study. So you need to study, because the introduction, this is basically most of the time the chapter 1 of your proposal. So it has so many things. It has the background of your study. It is the place that will now, it is the chapter that will have your statement of the problem, the justification, maybe the research questions, or the hypothesis, all that, okay? Now, the introduction generally covers the following elements. state the problem, which is often referred to as the purpose of the study or the problem statement of the problem, depending on what you want to call it. It will also provide the context and set the stage for your research question in such a way as to show how its necessity and importance. It presents the rationale for your proposed study, briefly describes the major issues and sub-problems, identifies the key independent and dependent variables, set your hypothesis or theory, if any, set the delimitations or boundaries of your proposed research, and provides definitions of keywords. This is optional. So sometimes you do operational definition of terms, but there's also a way you define these terms as you write in your background without just, maybe I'm not saying you write them in bullet points, but if you're talking about teenage pregnancy, for example, you need to talk about, define teenage pregnancy. So teenage pregnancy is, ABCD, so that we get to understand throughout the document, we understand whenever we see you using the word teenage pregnancy, which is your main central, your central point of focus, then we know, okay, it was already defined, so we understand. So when you are writing your background, make sure that you also, terms that need to be defined so that you get to understand them better are defined, okay? Now, the introductory part of your proposal includes, one of them is the statement of the problem. So I'm not going to talk about this. I think I talked about this enough when I was talking about the problem tree and all this. So it includes the statement of the problem, which is a clear statement of the problem. Answers the question. A clear statement of the problem answers this question: why does this research need to be conducted? So that could be the justification, but then the statement of the problem now brings out the problem. What is you are stating the problem. The problem with most people when stating, Andrew, hey. So sorry for that. There was something I was attempting to shut. So the statement of the problem is, as we say, is a clear statement of the problem. It's a clear statement of the problem that answers the question. And as I was saying, sometimes when we think about when students are writing the statement of the problem, they end up providing a justification in the process. You find they are writing and then they start saying that it is for this reason that this study needs to be done, so that no, don't go there. When you are writing a proposal, there is already just a minute. I'm sorting out something. My internet, I think, is acting up. Just 1 minute, please. Okay, so as I was saying, sometimes when students start writing the statement of the problem, they try also to include the justification in that statement of the problem by trying to justify why that study is important, why it is important for them to. That one, leave that one for the section, for the justification or for the significance of study section. Okay, if you try to write the problem and try to justify it at the same time, you are going to fall into the problems of trying to. You will end up mixing up things. So here you just need to tell us what is the problem, narrate the problem, what is the ideal situation and what is the current situation, so that we get to know what the problem is. Now, it contains several paragraphs of explanation, and most of the time we are told just to do it in one paragraph, and most of the time we are told if you can do 3/4 of a page, maybe, that would be good. Otherwise, if you are doing more than that, then my supervisor always tells me, if I see you writing your statement of the problem in 1 page or more than that, then already I know that you are not really clear on the problem you are solving. So it has to be a bit short, but clear enough. So maybe three quarters of a page. If it goes to a page, then you need to start also trying to refine it even further. It should be as short as possible, but not as short as possible, but as clear as possible, so that whoever is reading it gets to understand why it is important. When without reading too many words, they should be able to understand why it is important for that, what the problem is, that you understand the problem that you are studying. Sometimes when you write so many things, or when your statement of the problem is too long, you might end up, you realize you've repeated so many things. And that's why I kept saying, go back and write go back and use what do you call it? Problem tree. The problem tree will help you organize your problems, your statement of the problem, in a way that it does not repeat anything. It will help you in a way that it does not repeat anything, because you already have linked up every single problem and the causes and the consequences. So it's very easy for you now to link them and say, okay, I've written this, I've written this. So go back and use the problem tree as already I had already talked about. In it, you are trying to look for something wrong, something that needs close attention, or something where existing methods no longer seem to be working. So that is why you are writing a statement of the problem. So you need to think about that even as you write your statement of the problem. Okay? So basically that is what we are stating. And you need to also tell us the gaps. And that is why we are saying here that where existing methods no longer seem to be working, or what needs close attention. So if there is still a gap, then you can say, okay, these are the actual problems that are faced in the society. This is what is not known, and that is why the problem is persisting. So you don't go ahead and tell us why the study is important, because there's a section for it. Okay, the section for it will come maybe after the objectives, but I think the objectives you all know. An objective is a clear, concise, declarative statement which provides direction for to investigate the variables. The objective, for example, is just an objective is just, you talked about the problems, and then, so I'm going to solve this problem. How am I going to solve this problem, actually? So the good thing with very clear objectives is, it now helps you also know the data sets you need to collect, the kind of data, the amount of data, and also the methodologies. It can also help you now come up with the methodologies. So I'm really not going into telling you how to write these objectives. Most of the time, you just write them, for example, you start with the word to. Most of the time, I think that is mostly the standard procedure. Of course, there are a bit of variations here and there, but most of the time is to investigate. To investigate maybe is not very clear, but maybe to determine, to assess, for example, that, those things. What most of the time, sometimes when people write objectives, and especially when you're writing objectives in your proposal, or when you're writing your objectives when doing your presentation, make sure you write them in Roman numbers. So when it's objective 1, just write 1, then write objective. So because sometimes you find people writing in Roman numbers. I don't know how to call them. There's the Roman numbers that use letters like 1, 2, 1, which is I, 2, which is 2 I's. Don't use that one. Use the normal numbers that are 1, 2, 3, the ones that we use in math. That is how you write your objective, so that when you are presenting, for example, somebody will tell you, I want to see you, just go to your objective 1. And then it's very clear to you what objective 1 is. Even for them, they know this objective 1. So use that instead of trying to use those Roman numbers, okay? Then after objectives, of course, depending on your study or depending on the objectives you have, we either have hypotheses or we have research questions. Now, hypotheses mostly are used when we have a bit of some sufficient knowledge and we are trying to speculate. So we already speculate. We can speculate whether they are relationships or impacts or influences of one variable on another. So that one we can already use to speculate when in that case, then when we are testing relationships or correlations or stuff, then we can always speculate and use hypotheses. But when we don't have that, then we always use research questions. Now, when you are going to do, when you are doing a hypothesis, make sure that each objective has its own hypothesis. Okay, and we have the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. So the null hypothesis is the one that is mostly used, where we assume that there's no significant difference, or there's no significant influence, or there's no significant relationship. But the alternative hypothesis is where we assume there's a relationship. Now, when we are using that, when you are going for research, you want to assume that there's no relationship, so that when you do your research, your analysis, your data analysis, you will either reject or accept that there is a relationship or not. So most of the time we use the null hypothesis and test and frame our hypothesis that there's no significant difference or there's no significant relationship, okay? But when we are using a research question, for example, research questions are used to analyze and investigate a topic. It is written as a question and is inquisitive in nature. So we have causal questions, for example, we have descriptive questions and comparative questions, okay? So you will read through this to get the differences, but then one of them, for example, like the causal ones, this one compares two or more phenomena and determines if a relationship exists. Does the amount of calcium in the diet of the elementary school children affect the number of cavities they have per year? So that is a question that you are asking yourself. So maybe the objective here was to determine the number or the effects of the amount of calcium in the diets of elementary school kids on the number of on the cavities, on the number of cavities per year, on the yearly cavity, maybe the number of cavities per year. But the whole thing is that you need to know when to use a research question and when to use an hypothesis. And research questions, as I said, are mostly used when you are not testing, when you are not sure, or when you cannot speculate the differences that are there. I think I've talked about hypothesis and I've given an example. So it is predictive in nature. It is used when significant knowledge already exists on the subject, which allows the prediction to be made. It is always written as a statement. Okay. Those group works, no. Then the significance of the proposed study. Now, this is where I want us to think about. There is what we call the justification of the study and the significance of the study. What is the difference between the justification of study and significance of study? Anybody? Hello?
Yeah, let me just try. Yeah, well, to my own knowledge, when you talk of the justification, is the importance what this study will be used for, and for instance, for maybe contribute to knowledge and also addressing some further research gap of for the for the wider public, and the significance is the importance of the study. Thank you.
Any other suggestion?
I can give my view.
Yes, please.
I think in the justification, you're demonstrating why it is important to conduct that particular study, but in the significance is very specific to how, when you conduct that study, the findings are going to either impact or, solve a problem that is existing beyond, generally conducting the study or being very specific.
I can give it a try.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Was I heard? Sorry.
Yes, I heard you. Okay. I heard you very well. Yes.
So we are looking at significance and justification of the study. And the two issues answer the question why. So for me, I'd say significance of the study addresses the question, why are we conducting this study? Then justification of the study is why did we conduct this study and who is it going to benefit? So when we are explaining who it is going to benefit, we point out the three key areas. It is theory, it is policy, it is research that is going to benefit from this study. That is my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. You all have, I think, answered this the way I would have wanted it answered. Just simply put, the justification is about the output of your research, while the significance is about the outcome of your research results. So the justification is talking about the data sets you're going to collect, which is the data that is coming out of this is the importance of the data. This is what the data I'm going to collect how do I put it? This is the importance of the data that I'm going to collect, and this is how it's going to help solve this problem. But then the significance is the outcome of this. How will this, of what importance will this be, especially to the community, for example, or other students that can rely on this to formulate their own research ideas, or policies that can come out of this. So when you're writing a significance, make sure that you tell us how important or how the results of your work can be utilized. Okay, so how can the results of how can the results of your work be utilized to in the society or in terms of policy and stuff like this? So I really don't think the difference is not so big, but sometimes when you find there are universities that will tell you to write the justification and also write the significance. That is why we need to think about how do we separate these two, so that you don't feel like they're asking me to write the significance and the justification at the same time, but this is one and the same thing. They could appear to be very close, but they're not exactly the same. Okay? Yeah, so it should demonstrate how your research benefits or impacts others and the people who might benefit from your research. So when you're writing this section, you need to tell us who will benefit or who can utilize the results of your study. Then we have the literature review section. We've talked about this a little bit. The literature review section, this one is developed, it develops broad ideas of what is already known in our field and what questions are still unanswered. You remember when we started, we said that as you try to write your proposal, the first part of the proposal, the introductory part, where we have just talked about the introduction and all that, it also could have several other sections depending on your field. There are people who will even have limitations of the study. There's quite a lot, but that can also sometimes come towards the next section that we're going to talk about the methodology. But the introductory part of your research is basically where you are just narrating to us why you need to do the study and why the study is important. So that is, it could have a few other sections, but mostly it's just about the background, the justification, the objectives, the statement of the problem, the justification, and maybe the hypothesis and significance of study, bit of that. Now, the literature review section mostly is just where you are going to review literature. I really don't think there is much to say here. Tomorrow will be the day where I will be showing you where to get papers from, which tools you can use now to summarize and read them in a very easy way. But today I just want to talk about the literature review section, as we said, and you all know that this is a section where you are going to demonstrate to us that I know and I understand what has already been studied in my field. Basically. So here, this is where you are demonstrating to us that I have read, I know what gaps are. Now, when you are writing your literature review section in your proposal, don't just go around summarizing what other people have done. You also need to show us a bit of some synthesis. And make sure that every time you are writing a paragraph, try to link it back to the problem you are solving or to your topic. Try to relate. This is what other people have done. This is what they have written. This is what they wrote. And this is what the current study is now trying to do. So every time you're writing your literature review section, make sure you tease out the gaps that are there and show them very clearly in the literature review section. So the literature review section also, as you write it, I also want to keep seeing you referring back to the current problem and the current gap in research, so that I get to understand how your literature review is relevant to the current study you want to, the study you want to conduct. Otherwise, if you just keep narrating to me and repeating what other people did and summarizing it, it's difficult for me to try and understand how, what you saw in the literature that you wrote. So make sure that as you write, you try to synthesize and tell us, this is what is known, this is what has been done already, but then this is where the gaps are, and this is where my research is now coming in to fill in this gap. So because the gaps that you are going to find and tell us that the gaps that exist in your that necessitated, the research gaps that necessitated your research are in the literature that you read. That is where you're going to demonstrate to us. So make sure you tease out these gaps even in your literature. So as you write your literature, try to show us where gaps still exist and how your research is relevant to those gaps. Okay? Now, what questions are still unanswered? And also, that is the section where you are also going to look at what they, so it will help you understand in further narrowing the problem for investigation. Now, you must show that you have looked through the literature and have found the latest updates in your field of study. Okay, so we will talk about this tomorrow, so that how do you stay up to date? How do you make sure that you get information maybe that is only maybe 5 years late, 5 years old, or something less than that. So we will talk about this tomorrow. But today, my most important thing I wanted to bring out here is that as you write literature, it's not just about summarizing what other people have done. It's about also teasing out the gaps, the research gaps, for example, that are there, so that you also see that this is how your research is now coming in to fill in those gaps. Okay, so when you bring out those gaps, try to tie them back to your title. Try to tie them back to the problem you're solving. Try to tie them back to your study, so that you get to understand how this literature review section sits within the study that you are doing. Otherwise, we will just assume that you went and just read and did not even think of analyzing the gaps that are still there. So the literature review serves several important functions. But then before we get there, there's something I want to bring to your attention. Depending on your field of study, there are some fields of study where you are supposed to do both empirical literature review and theoretical literature review. And especially sometimes in the field of some humanities and some social sciences, you are told that we want to see the theory upon which your study is anchored. So that means that you have to do what we call theoretical literature review. So you must review some theories that are relevant to your research and tell us that I have reviewed 5 theories, for example. And based on those 5 theories, I think that the one that is most relevant to my study is this. So my study is anchored on this theory. So that is what we are going to do. Well, that is what we call theoretical literature review. In that case, we are just reviewing theories. The different theories, they could have been written or developed by certain people. They could have been modified over time. They could have been used in certain literature and modified. So try to review certain literature that are theoretical. So do what we call theoretical literature review if that is required in your field. And there is what we call empirical literature review. Empirical literature review, and most fields just call upon you to do empirical literature review. In my field, I only do empirical literature review. This is review of literature. You are reviewing papers that were, research papers that were conducted and results published. So here you are going to review literature on papers and research articles that are already online. It could be books, online documents, and any other thing. But this one, you are talking about empirical data that you are reviewing. So you're not talking about theories, but you're talking about empirical data. That is now the difference between empirical literature review and theoretical literature review. So if your study requires you, or if your field requires both empirical and theoretical literature review, make sure you do both. But if your field only requires one, just do one. And most of the time, empirical literature review is the most common that is done. So when you are doing empirical literature review, mostly you are just reviewing literature that has, based on research or research articles that are published out there. But theoretical literature review, you are going to review theories and pick a theory upon which you will anchor your study. Okay. The literature review serves several important functions. One of them, it ensures that you are not reinventing the wheel. You don't want to show us that this is something completely new, that you are the only one who has thought about it, okay? It gives credit to those who have laid the groundwork for your research. So this is where you are going to cite works of other people. You are going to, show us what has been done by whom and, what they found. So this is also giving credit to those who have laid the groundwork for your research. It demonstrates your knowledge of the research problem. This is it. When I'm reading your literature review section, I will get to understand whether you did a deep analysis of the problem. It demonstrates your understanding of the theoretical and research issues related to your research question. I think we talked about theoretical literature review at one point. It shows your ability to critically evaluate relevant literature information, indicates your ability to integrate and synthesize the existing literature. So that's as I said, literature review is not just about summarizing what other people did. You need to synthesize and also tie back this to the problem you're currently solving. It also provides new theoretical insights or develops a new model as the conceptual framework of your research. Now, there are in certain studies where you are required to develop a theoretical framework or a conceptual framework. So a conceptual framework mostly is developed out of literature review. So you get to understand how these theories or how these concepts are linked together. So now how does this link to this? How does this variable link to this? What causes this? What causes that? And that is what now helps you develop a conceptual framework. Now, it's difficult for you to develop a conceptual framework if you have not done literature review, because it will be difficult for you to understand how these concepts fit within the context of your study. So that is one of the reasons. Now, the context in which the problem arises is historical and current researchers in the field. So that is important, and that is what our literature review section does. It is important because it shows what previous researchers have discovered and what has not been discovered yet. One of the key elements that proposals readers look at when deciding whether or not to approve a proposal. So when they are looking at your proposal, one of the places they will go and check is your literature review section, and make sure you're up to date. If you are reciting works that were done 20, 15 years ago, unless, there are some methodologies, for example, or there are some data that you find it was done a long time ago, there's nothing new. So you go through the literature in your field and say, I've really gone through literature. There's nothing in 2024, nothing in 2023, nothing in 2020, nothing in 1998. I only have literature that were done in 1975, which is very unlikely, but try to stay as up to date as possible. We'll talk about that more. I'll show you several tools that can help you stay up to date. Never say that your field is so new that no research exists. Very unlikely, highly unlikely that you will find that your field is so new that there's nothing that exists. The next part and the last part most of the time is, how do you intend to do your work? So this is the methodology. There's a difference between methodology and materials and methods, especially in when we are doing mostly in how do we call it? In natural sciences, we have what we call materials and methods. And sometimes people think about the methodology basically is the broad approach. What approach are you going to use? So the methodology or the methodology section outlines the strategy for conducting the research to answer a question or realize your objective. So the methodology or the methods you are going to use to collect your data is mostly determined, not mostly, it's determined by your objectives. So you could find that each objective would have its own methods of collecting data. So there are objectives that you are only going to achieve by conducting certain experiments, or there are objectives within your research that you are going to do to achieve by maybe doing a survey, or maybe administering a questionnaire, or doing key informant interviews. So each objective should be can be unique on its own, or sometimes you would find that you do an experiment that will answer all the objectives. That still happens, but your methodology section mostly is guided by your objectives. So the objectives will show you, or the objectives will dictate the kind of approach or the kind of methods you're going to use. And in this setting, or in the discussion we're having today, it's difficult for me now to go into the details of each person's objective or each person's methods, because we are from different fields. So it's difficult for me to tell you that in your field, you need to collect data in this way. In your field, you need to collect data in this way. No, that will not happen. So what you only need to think about is, in your methodology section, you need to think about the fact that you need to state very clearly how you are going to collect the data sets that you need. You know, how. This is the how. How are you going to approach this? How are you going to select your study site, for example? Or how are you going to select the people you are going to involve in the study? What tools are you going to use? What kind of experiments are you going to conduct, for example? So let's say you are going to use questionnaires, or you are going to do a cross-sectional study or a longitudinal study, for example. How many people are you going to use? How are you going? What is the inclusion and exclusion criteria? What is the sample size? How are you going to calculate this? What are the limitations of your study? What is the scope of your study, for example? So all these things need to go into this, so that when I'm reading this, I get to understand, okay, this person is, these are the data sets that this person is going to collect, and this is how they are going to collect them, okay? Plan the procedures that will be used in the investigation or in the research. Review different approaches, designs, and methods for investigating your area of research. So even as you review literature, you also need to review the methodologies. Of course, there are going to be a bit of uniqueness in your study because of, you know, each study is unique on its own, but generally most approaches are the same. So you'll find you get, if I want to do administer questionnaires, for example, so I'm going to do a cross-sectional study, for example, I'm going to use mixed method where I'm going to collect both qualitative and quantitative data. How do I approach it generally? So how do I design my tools, for example? How do I select the people? You know, like maybe you are going to do randomization. How do I randomize? Those ones have to be very clear in your methodology so that somebody gets to understand how you did the random selection, how did you calculate and arrive at the total number of your sample size. So the sample size, let's say, is 30 or 50. How did you arrive at 50? What was the total population, for example? How did you determine this total population? Is it based on the census of that area? All this needs to go into your methodology section. Now, in the event that you are following a protocol that is already developed, you don't need to, let's say you are analyzing water quality, as an example, and you are following a standard procedure or a standard protocol that is already developed in your field and it is out there and it is being used. You don't need to start narrating that 55 milliliters of magnesium was dissolved in hot water, and then you don't need to do that. Just say that water quality analysis or water quality analysis were conducted according to, and then you just give reference to that protocol. So it's easier for people to go, and if somebody wants to go and get more details, they will go and check how that was done. But you don't need to now start putting us the nitty-gritties of each and every single detail about that method, the procedures that were used in, for example, determining the concentrations of the different nutrients in the water or water quality parameters. So those are the things. And as I said, depending on your field, make sure you just give enough details. It's difficult for me now to start narrating how each field would work. So mine is just to tell you that you need to give enough details so that when I'm reading a proposal, I get to understand how you are, including even the data analysis. So you need to tell us, how will you analyze your data? How will you clean it? What data analysis tools will be used? Maybe what kind of analysis, correlation analysis, regression analysis, for example, ANOVA, all this, text analysis, or maybe thematic analysis if you are collecting qualitative data, for example. So all these things need to be very clear so that you get to understand. When I'm reading your methodology section, it's clear to me how you live and handle your data. TCC conducts also trainings in data management and analysis. So, just be on the lookout. We will be conducting training on data analysis. So you'll be able to be trained on how to analyze your data. After the methodology, we will have the time frame, or sometimes the work plan. So basically, this is just what will be done when. I'm not really going into too much details here. So you just need to know month 1 to month 2, I will be doing this. Month 3 to month 4, I'll be doing this. And sometimes in this case, most of the time these days, especially for PhD, you will be expected to even give us the output or the milestone at the end of this. So month 1 to month 2, I'll be developing my proposal. What will be the milestone? What will be the output of that task that you'll be doing within that time frame? I'm seeing increasingly universities are now insisting that you write it in that format. If your university just requires you to say what will be done within what time frame, no problem. You don't have to do the output one. But some universities will ask you to do even that. that make sure that your timelines are feasible and they make sense. You don't want to tell me that you are going to do something on the impacts of maybe a certain intervention on the impact or on the health of a household, and you want to do it in 2 days, or you want to monitor if you're going to, you are going to distribute nets, mosquito nets, for example, to households, and then you want to monitor how the rate of malaria, whether it has had a negative or an impact on the rate of malaria incidences, or the number of malaria incidences in this household, and you want to tell me that you want to do it in a day or 2 days, that will make no sense. So make sure that your timeframes or your plan is feasible and something that makes sense. Okay, so what questions do you need to consider when setting up your schedule? When will the research start and finish? Are there particular stages to the research, like piloting, screening, interviews, planning, laboratory analysis, for example? You remember, like in when you are administering questionnaires, for example, there is the pilot study where you go out there and test your tool. So let's say you are going, your sample size is 300 households. How many households should you include in your pilot study? Maybe somebody can help us. You have developed your tool. The sample size is 300 households. How many households are we putting in our pilot study? Hello?
I think 10%. I'm not sure of the source, but I may have read somewhere. I don't know if that's true.
And why do we do pilot study before we now go full-blown collecting data?
It's basically to maybe make correction to or addition or any subtraction. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. It's for us to test our tool and see whether does it really answer the questions or the objectives we have. You might go and test your data and test your tool and realize, hey, this one, the way it was structured, maybe these questions are either not too clear, or maybe there's just a way it's not answering the objective. So if I continue collecting data using this specific tool, I will not answer the objectives of my study completely. So I need to go back. And so this is about reliability, mostly. It's about reliability and validity of your tool. And when you are doing this piloting, you make sure that you analyze the data. Don't just pilot and put it there. Analyze the data to the end and try to interpret it. Just do everything that you could have done when doing the actual study. So I have also seen that most of the time they're recommending that you do 10% of your sample size. So if the sample size is 500, just try your pilot study and do 50 households and analyze that data and see if there are any, if it's really coming out the way you would have imagined. Of course, you cannot, when you're going out to the field, you are going to the field because you don't know the answers. But then there's an answer you are imagining. So if you are finding, like, let me give you an example. In my field, the field of aquaculture mostly, there are certain parts of the value chain that are mostly dominated by women, like value addition, product development. But the production stages or the production nodes of the aquaculture value chain is mostly dominated by men. So men are the ones who are going out to the lake fishing, or when they're the ones who maybe own these big farms where fish is produced. But then I'm taking out my tool. I'm going to analyze something on the aquaculture sector. And then I realized that the production section, out of the 50 questionnaires that I took out there, I found out that 47 of them, I am finding that women are the ones who are in the lake fishing. I will go back and ask myself, what is happening? Is this what is happening? Or, was there some problem with my tool? So it's very important that you analyze that tool, that the pilot results, and find out if there are any adjustments you need to make. That was just what, and even for other studies, you need to go to the field. For example, if you are going to do sampling in the lake, or you are going to do, just maybe you need to go and do a whole day sampling, for example. Just sample. Go to the lab, do your water quality analysis, identify the invertebrates, for example, identify the fish that you have sampled, and just try to find out if I want to now go out for 1 month or 2 months to do my data collection. Does it look like the protocol is okay, my methodology, all that, okay? Sometimes then the other thing is the budget. So the budget, of course, is just the items that you need and the amount of money needed for each of these budgets. So a narrative portion, most of these times, this is now what we call a budget proposal. So you write a budget. Some projects, especially when you are writing a whole project, not like a PhD proposal or master proposal, but like a grant proposal, they will always want you to write a grant, what we call a budget proposal, where you need to justify, explain if you want an off-road car, why would you need an off-road car, for example, how much would it cost? Are there any other alternatives that we could look at? Okay, then budgetary considerations are important for all projects. It should be as realistic as possible because no one wants to give their money to be wasted or to be diverted to other uses. So you need to convince me how the 75 million. Yes, Tongu.
Yes, doctor, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Fine, sir.
Yes.
Now, before we continue, I would like to find some clarification.
Yes.
On especially the pilot project that one needs to consult. For example, mine.
Yes.
I'm almost going to work on the methodology of my study, which is in Uganda, West Nile.
Yes.
In secondary schools, and West Nile has 14 districts. I've not established the population of the schools in the district.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think I have to carry out the pilot project. But now my question is, how will I manage it? What can I do? Because it is a comparative study of government-aided and private schools in the whole of West Nile. Now, sampling needs another problem. It is another problem. And then again, pilot project to establish whether what I need to find out will be feasibly correct or not. Should it be possible that I can take carry the project, the pilot project in the nearer districts, or I have to move further? That's what I need some assistance in. Thank you.
Why did you choose the whole of Western Nile? Why did you not choose maybe a district or two?
It is a PhD project now. My supervisors wanted me to do the whole, to carry out in the whole region, sub-region. So yes, I don't know, that is the guidance.
The pilot study mostly is just testing your tool, whether the tool will be able to answer the question. So what I always tell people, if you have, how many districts do you have, for example? How many districts are we looking at?
There are 14 districts in the West Nile sub-region.
So for the pilot study, you cannot go to, let's say you cannot pilot in all the 14 districts. That will be very expensive for you just for a pilot study.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, my suggestion is that you can choose out of the 14, you can decide, hey, I'm going to just maybe two districts, and I'm just going to pilot my study in 2 districts. And maybe you are not going to, because you are still also going to determine the total number of schools so that you can decide how many schools are you going to sample, because you might have maybe 200 or 2,000 schools, and you cannot sample 2,000 schools, for example. So one of the things is you need to think about the total number, but for the pilot study, you can pick even just two districts and decide, okay, in these 2 districts, I'm going to administer like maybe 20 questionnaires per district so that you have a total of 40 questionnaires. It's just about the reliability and the robustness of your tool. You are just coming back with data and looking at all those questions and trying to enter this data and analyze it and see, okay, I'm looking at this data. The way people are answering this question, it's like it's not very clear to them. Is there a way I can reframe it in a way that when it's asked, it's now clear and people can give me the answers that, would answer the objectives that I want. So for piloting, it's just for you just to test your tool and see whether the questions will really help you answer get the results for your objective. It might not really be just for you to get a reflection of what is in the field, but mostly the pilot study is mostly on focusing on your tool. Now, the other thing, so generally my answer is that you can do two districts and not so many. You can, based on the total number of schools you are looking at, you can do 2 districts, and in these 2 districts, you can do maybe 20 per district, or even just 10 per district, and then analyze this data and try to interpret it.
Okay, thank you.
And right now, there is, especially for those in the field social sciences. You don't need to go out there with papers. Yeah, I think long gone are the days where people would walk around with papers in their hands, and then they are entering this manually. Maybe if I would want to ask, which tools are you now people using in data collection? For those who are in social sciences, the ones in natural sciences, I think we know how we do some of these things. But those who are administering questionnaires, for example, how do you do it?
Well, maybe if I could come in, we have
Yes.
some online data collection tools. One common one is the Kobo Collect. You indicate, and it's important in terms of analysis. So you can just have your spreadsheet and use any analysis software, be it SPSS data or you can use the Google form or the ODK Open Data Kit. So these are all you can just copy on your phone if you don't want to use a laptop and then have a problem, or share it out.
Thank you so much for bringing this. I want to discourage you people from using papers. So when you do, just ask anybody. You can easily digitize your questionnaires and digitize your tools, and then you can easily send a link so that whoever is collecting data, it has even the GPS provision. So whoever is collecting data, they cannot sit under a mango tree and collect data and lie that they have gone to this household. It will even map for you this household. So if you are not privy on how to do it, just maybe go online or just ask for somebody to help you digitize your data so that you don't go around working with papers. Because the good thing with these digitized tools, once the data is analyzed, is entered into Kobo Collect, for example, what happens is you can easily just download it as a CSV file or download it as an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can now go ahead with whatever analysis you want to do, as has already been explained. So I want to discourage you from using papers and try getting into the digital platform. I think one thing that I wanted to bring to your attention was budget. I think we've talked about this, that you must convince us why you need that budget. And then after that, we have the reference list. So the references, you need to put anything that you have listed in your document must be listed under references. And I want to ask you to think about reference management tools so that you don't do your references manually, because it's a lot of work. So you can learn how to use Mendeley, you can learn how to use Zotero, you can learn how to use EndNote or RefWorks, whichever, but try as much as possible to learn how to use a reference management tool. I will stop here so that we have a general discussion before we have a short break, and then we come back for manuscript writing. Kevina, you will alert us when we need to take a short break, because we want to start the other one at around 11, so that we have around 2 hours to talk about manuscript writing. So it is in this plenary session, I will not be answering all the questions. We will all be answering. Mine was there to lead the discussion, and now, because we have different experiences, we are all going to answer those questions. I will start with Wilfred Ojok.
Thank you, Doc, for the elaborate knowledge sharing you have given us. I actually raised my hand earlier relating to when you were discussing about the tools we should approaches we adopt for data collection, where you are encouraging us to always use the online approaches instead of the traditional questionnaire hard copy approach. But I was also thinking that that can well be guided using depending on the nature of your respondents, because if your study is engaging people who are not online oriented, they are not IT oriented. If you use the Google approach or the Google Forms, the Kobo Collect tools, it is difficult to get data from such people who are not IT oriented. So I think the nature of your respondents also guide the kind of tool you can use to collect data. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing that. And that is mostly true for how do you call it? If they are going to administer this by themselves. So if you are sending links for them and telling them to answer these questions by themselves, then it's difficult for them, especially if they don't understand all these online things. But you can still use Kobo or use any other tool if you are the one who is going to talk to them, or if you are sending some other people to administer. So these are the people who are going to these respondents and asking these questions and answering them and are entering them in the tool. But it's true, what you have said is very true, that sometimes you want these people to self-administer, and then you are sending a link to somebody who does not even have a smartphone. So how do you expect them to give you the information? They don't even know what you're talking about. They open that Kobo Collect tool and they don't know what it is. They are seeing some things, they don't know what to do. So it's true that you also, even as we decide on the kind of technologies or all these kind of methodologies to apply when we are trying to administer these questionnaires, we need to think about the respondents. Are they able to interact with this tool? Are they able to understand the tool we are using? But also, if you are going to use other people to help you collect your data, or even if you are going to do it yourself, you can still walk into their houses with your smartphone, for example, and then still answer the questions on Kobo. But yes, it's true. You need to think about that. Are the people, even the people who are going to help you collect data, are they able to do it? So most of the time, right now we are running certain projects and we are collecting data, and I'm handling 500 enumerators. We are characterizing aquaculture projects in Kenya. We are looking at we are characterizing the aquaculture sector in the whole of Kenya, and I'm handling around 500 respondents, and they will be in the field for like 10 days. Now you can imagine the kind of pressure when you have 500 people always reaching out. This question is like this. I'm asking this question. If somebody answers like this, is this still correct, or do I need to? So you can imagine all that. So you need people who are competent enough so that when they go out there with the tool, they understand the tool. And that is what happens when you develop a tool, you do a pilot test. You must, when you are pilot testing, you must pilot test even with the people who are going to handle the tool, so that you are sure that this guy from the pilot testing, the way his questionnaires were answered, I really don't think this guy understood what we are doing during the training. Maybe they did not understand the tool enough, so maybe I need to either retrain him or maybe get him out of the tool, of the team. I'm seeing Henry David Bayo. I hope that is correctly.
Yesterday, last week we did a questionnaire. We are in the field and just returning back. If we interviewed local farmers who were not educated, so you will have to do or train the data collectors. Of course, they can use it ask the question in different languages. But if you are doing, maybe you want them to admit self-administration, that's the challenge. Is also difficult. But you go in the field and ensure that you collect the data. And the important thing, you can collect pictures as well of how you do it. Yeah, doing your interview session or your problem. Thank you. Then my question is about the research methods. You mentioned more using the mixed method. Which one should come first? Is it the qualitative or the quantitative, or they go both simultaneously? I know your methods, you design your methods based on the objective, but which one? Then also in terms of the tools you're using in your methodology analysis tools, do you have appropriate tools? For instance, in data analysis, there's a tool called Jamovi, which you can use, but I don't know whether some universities or research institutions have specific tools that people should use in terms of analysis. Then also now we have a lot of AL tools that are available there. Is it appropriate in terms of using those tools, or which one that is not good for your research? Thank you.
Thank you. I will say what I will do is, I think, as I said, any other person, we can now just come in and have a discussion here, because I think we have different experiences. If we only share from my experience, then we are losing out on a lot of experiences. One question he has asked, if you are using mixed methods, which one should come first? Should we collect the qualitative data first and then collect quantitative data? And in terms of data analysis, which tools are good? Or which tools are allowed for this data analysis? And there's AI these days everywhere. So, is it good to use AI for data analysis, for example? So I will give Bernard first and then Alison. Bernard. Bernard Ngoruse. Hello, Bernard.
Hello. Yeah, I'm back.
Yes, Bernard.
Now, mine is a question.
Yeah.
At times, you might find that when you're going out in the field,
yeah,
you have specific respondents that you wanted to contact, but you can't get them at the time that you end in the field. So you might be required to leave a questionnaire. And in this time, you're talking about Kobo or any other tool or ODK. or even an online link that you can send. Now, how do we do you have any tactics to improve the success rate? Because sometimes the respondent might choose to ignore the question, the questionnaire, or might not respond completely. Let's say you have got 10 respondents. How do we improve do you have any tactics to improve the responses so that you can get at least 7 of them responding to a questionnaire? Thank you.
Okay, so I will start by answering the questions about the qualitative and quantitative, but I don't know whether, Alison, do you want to come in first before?
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I think I want to try to answer the question of which one comes first.
Yeah.
I think, according to me, it depends on which method are you using. Is it exploratory sequential or explanatory sequential? Or you have embedded the two?
Yeah.
So if it means explanatory sequential, that means you have to begin with the qualitative, and then you analyze, and then you come and work on the quantitative later.
Yeah.
And when it is explanatory sequential, you go for quantitative data first. Then after analyzing, it guides you to go for explanatory now for qualitative. But if you have embedded, now it depends on which objectives you weigh more. Is it the one of qualitative or quantitative? Then you can put the methods accordingly. So I think it is up to which methodology has he designed his work on, his research work on. If it is exploratory sequential, then qualitative first. Exploratory sequential, quantitative first. If it is embedded together, then which one weighs more? Now depends there. Thank you.
Thank you. I will not add anything to that. The one I will talk about is the data analysis tool. I'm not very good in data analysis, but I will say this, that for data analysis, it depends on the kind of analysis you want to do. I'm seeing people using NVivo, for example, for text analysis and maybe thematic analysis, and then people using R and others maybe for some quantitative data. And they also have a bit of capability on analyzing qualitative data. So the tool that you use depends on the kind of study you are doing. So I think that will now depend so much on the study you are doing. I'm not very good in data analysis, I will not lie. There is a specific person at TCC Africa who trains on data analysis. So maybe he will answer that very well, but mine is just to tell you that it depends on the kind of study you are doing. The use of AI, yes, AI is everywhere, including in academia, so we cannot run away from it. I think it's difficult for us to run away from the fact that AI is everywhere, and we can't start saying that we cannot use AI or AI is wrong, is not right to use. It's just about using AI responsibly. If we use it ethically and we don't use it maybe to, people use AI even in medicine, and AI is everywhere. So I really don't think there's a problem with ethical use of AI in data analysis and even in academia in general. We cannot run away from that reality. Yes, somebody was talking about the success rate. How do we improve the success rate? We are sending out questionnaires to people and then they are all ignoring. It might be a bit difficult. Sometimes I've seen people trying to motivate people by trying to say that we are going to compensate for your time. So you tell them, okay, we have this, maybe we can, we can give you maybe something to motivate, just to compensate for your time. Maybe they're going to sit and answer your questions for 30 minutes. So that is one motivation. But sometimes people might then end up answering these questions just because they want the money, but maybe not because they are genuine about the questions they are giving you. But mostly it's just about reminding these people. If you have their phone numbers, just be, kindly reminding them, gently asking them, hey, just try to remind more. I really don't think I can't tell you there's a trick, but it's just about trying. If you cannot motivate them by compensating them with something little like airtime, for example, you can tell them, okay, I'm sending out some airtime just to facilitate your internet bundles so that you can be able to maybe sit down and look at that. So once you send them airtime, they might feel obliged because, already I took some airtime, like 200 or 500 from this person. Let me just sit down and answer this. So maybe that is one of those ways, but I really don't think there's one way of doing it. I will allow us to have a short break, and then we can start our next session from 11. We will still have, we'll have a very long session afterwards, but then I would want us to have a break. I think we have sat down for so long. Let's just have a break, and then we come back at 11. Just rise from your chair, open the window, get some water to drink, and then in the next 10 minutes, we start again. See you in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone, and, thank you everyone for the session we have had. Indeed, I know there are some points of discussion that we need to have, but I want us to get to finish this, and then we now have, because part of what we need to talk about in writing our manuscript is already discussed in the proposal. So we might not take too long, so that we have a bit of time towards the end, just to discuss, some areas that we also, because I'm seeing we have a lot of experiences here, and it would be a good thing for us to also share experiences. I also learn a lot from the people I train. That is how I learn. In fact, one of the things that I learned, I've been training. I was invited to give a talk on scientific writing there's an organization called African Women in Science. Maybe somebody knows about them. It's run. It's called African Women in Science. It's called AWIS. When I was training, somebody was asking, what happens when you have, because people write manuscripts. We are going to talk about this. I'm just building this story so that you get to understand part of what we'll be talking about here. People get to write manuscripts, and then we are working with you trying to develop a manuscript for publication, and then somebody in the middle of the writing feels like, I'm not going to be author number one, so I don't want to put a lot of effort, or even if I put so much effort and then I become et al., I really don't think that's worth it. And now they are saying that increasingly, people are now able to share first authorship. In fact, there's a paper that was sent to me yesterday to read. I have just been busy. I should be able to read it and see how is it possible for people to share first authorship and say, okay, so and so these three people are sharing first authorship, and then the others are now second authors onwards. So these are the new things that I get to learn when I'm interacting with people that I train. And that's why I always want to have a session towards the end where we just get to discuss everyone else, because if only the trainer talks about the experience, their experience, what they have been doing or what they have read, then the discussion is really limited. But when we allow other people also to give their feedback and say, okay, this is my experience, this is what I think, then we get to learn from all of us. And, you never know. I think learning it never stops. We always learn all the time. Now, at this point, let us assume that we have written our proposal. It went through. We defended it successfully. We went to the field. We collected our data, analyzed that data, interpreted it, and we even ended up writing a good thesis, or we are in the process of writing our thesis. But we are required to publish a paper or two before we can defend it, before we can present or defend our thesis. So we want to now start developing a manuscript for publication, because this is one thing that is standing in our way for publication. One thing that I want also to bring to your attention before we even get into developing manuscripts, because I know most of us have experiences in developing manuscripts, it's just about giving tips here and there, but it's not completely a new thing, that I'm sure. Maybe there are a few people who have never had an experience of writing one, but you've been reading research papers, so you get to understand what goes into a research paper, how it is structured. I don't want to assume, of course, that's why we want to get into the training, but I want to tell people that it's always good to start thinking about your publication plan, even at the point of writing your proposal. Don't wait until you have empirical data, until you have analyzed your data, then you start running around trying to publish a paper or two. It will be too late, and you will be under a lot of pressure. How do you plan? The first thing you need to do is go to your faculty and ask them, if I write a review paper, whether a scoping review or a meta-analysis, out of the proposal that was approved, can it be counted as a publication when I'll be applying for defense? If they tell you yes, then go ahead and produce a review paper, even as you wait for empirical data, so that when the data comes, you are now just trying to publish your second paper. But if you wait until at the end, then you are trying to publish two papers, you know the review process. Sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it even takes 2 years. So if you wait until the end, it will be too difficult for you to be able to publish two papers. So as part of planning, ask your supervisors, and even go and ask the graduate study. In my school, it's called School of Graduate Studies. Go and ask them, I need to publish 2 papers before I can be able to defend my thesis. If I do a review paper out of the proposal that you approved, can that count as a publication? If they tell you yes, that will count, then start with that. That is one tip that I was just trying to throw out there, because sometimes we find ourselves at the end, we have data, we are trying to run around, publish 2 papers, it's just too impossible for us, then we get frustrated. So start planning early and plan with this. So here we are now talking about scientific writing and publishing, and now I want us to talk about how do we develop a manuscript for publication. One thing that I want us to also understand, even before we get into it, is if you have a thesis already and you want to extract manuscripts out of your thesis, you need to think about, let's say you have 4 objectives in your thesis as an example. Maybe not each objective can be able to sustain a paper on its own. You might find there's an objective that maybe does not have enough data to sustain a paper. So it might not stand on its own. So what you do in that case is look for 2 objectives, for example, that are closely linked, and try to merge their data and see if you put the data from the 2 objectives together, it can be able to sustain a manuscript. How do you decide on the amount of data that is sufficient for a manuscript? I think that is a very subjective question, but then you need to be able to have enough information to tell a full story. So if there's a problem you investigated and you chose that this objective was just addressing this specific part of the problem, then make sure you have enough data or enough information to narrate a full story about that specific aspect of the problem that that objective was addressing. Sometimes you find that there are objectives that can stand on their own. So you say, okay, the way I'm going to get manuscripts out of my thesis is each objective is going to be a paper. Sometimes you find that you have to combine 2 objectives for you to come up with 1 paper. So these are the things you need to think about. But sometimes people think that writing is hard work. I don't know whether that is the sentiment we are all sharing. Is writing that hard? Or is it an easy thing? For those who have tried it, or for those who have never tried writing completely, is writing hard or is it easy? Share your experience, maybe 2 people. You can also just type in the chat your experience. Yes, Alison.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I think it depends, but if you have started the journey and you're already there, and you are determined to even go up to the thesis level, I don't think it is hard. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other person? Do you find, especially, let's say, writing in general, maybe not just even the thesis or even the manuscript, but even writing, including even the proposal? Tongo said, if you started and you have a drive, something that is pushing you, then of course you will find your way around it, so it might not be that very hard. Any other person who wants to share their experience? It is hard for beginners if not well guided. It's very true. It's very true that most of the time we get supervisors, and I don't know whether it is just a problem with specific universities or it happens in many universities. You find that supervisors assume that you are doing a master's or you're doing a PhD, you should know how to write. It's an assumption. Not all of us know how to write. The example is sometimes when I train people or mentor people, you realize somebody did their master's or they did their degree, then they went into industry. They got employed and then worked for 20 years. Now they're coming back, they want to do either a PhD or a master's. They have a lot of experience in the field. They have a lot of experience in the industry. But then now when it comes down now to academic writing, it's not like they are fools. It's not like they're stupid. But the actual writing process becomes a bit challenging because they have been out of class for a long time. Yes, Emily.
Thank you. But I didn't mean to cut short what you are saying because it's very important. However,
yes,
my experience is sometimes when you consult and then you get guidance, sometimes it throws you off balance and you start rethinking. And the more sometimes you read, the more, and first of all, let me just say writing is not hard if you understand what you're writing about and you take time to read. However, regarding thesis, when you get feedback from these different people who have different perspectives, sometimes they can throw you into some confusion, especially where you have more than 3 or 2 variables. And when you want to carry along something that you feel is important, and let me give an example. If your background, like your first undergraduate course is in a different field, and then master's and PhDs in a totally different field, and you'd like to carry along your undergraduate and the requirements for the PhD course, sometimes marrying all that into one, workable topic can be challenging with different perspectives you get from scholars coming from all the different backgrounds. You can also guide on how to navigate that.
It's very true that, sometimes it's true. And also, I think it gets also compounded when we are now also even having 2 or 3 supervisors who also have different views on what you need to do, or how you need to do your writing, or how you need to guide, how you need to structure your proposal, or how you need to structure your writing, or how you need to formulate objectives and stuff like this. Now you are there, you are lost. You don't have an idea what to do. Now, one thing is you have to be driven, of course, by what you like and what you think is workable, what you understand. Sometimes we try to bite more than we can chew. You want to do something that is a bit complex. Let me give you an example. When I started writing my proposal for my PhD, I really just wanted to look at how can we produce in terms of efficiency. I'm looking at the water and nutrient use efficiency of an NFT aquaponics system. So this nutrient film technique, you don't have to worry about all those things. I'm just giving an example. This is where we are growing fish in tanks, and then we have pipes, we have fish in tanks. So water comes from the fish tank. You feed the fish, water comes from the fish tank. It flows through biofilters and a physical filter. Then it flows through pipes where you have planted your crops, and then you collect this water in a sump tank, and then this water is pumped back to the fish tank, and then it rotates that way. So it's a closed loop. That is the system I was collecting data. When I started that, I thought of doing everything, including microbial communities that are there, the nutrient loss, or nutrient trapping, fish, all those things. Then my supervisor told me, Nicholas, if you want to do every single thing, because my initial, I have 2 supervisors. One of them is a chemist. And this chemist now, he wants to bring about the chemical part, or the chemistry, or whatever it is, the chemical part of aquaponics. That is what he wanted me to do. But I'm not a chemist. I'm a biologist. So I wanted to do the biological part of this aquaponics just to see how efficient, how much am I getting the growth rates, for example, of the fish and the vegetables, the correlation between the water quality parameters, because I'm also a limnologist by training. So what happens is when you have all this feedback coming up and you are trying to figure out how to, iron out and bring all these things and marry everything together, it's quite a bit of a challenge. The only thing that can guide is, because you have supervisors for a reason. The good thing is, tell them whatever you want to do. What happens with most of us, and especially when we are approaching people or even supervisors, sometimes we go there without an idea. So then we are at their mercies to guide us on what needs to be done. It's a good thing to go and tell them, I want to look at A, B, C, D. What do you think? Maybe I need your advice. So they're advising you based on something you've already suggested. So they already, even in their heads, they know this guy is a bit interested in doing this other thing. But then if you go just there without telling them anything, they will guide you based on their experience and also based on their interests. So try to be guided, try to have a bit of some bearing of what you want to do before you get guided. We will get there, no problem, but I think the bottom line is, before I digress so much, is writing can be hard, and especially if you don't get guidance. And even when you get guidance, it depends on the kind of guidance you get. If, for example, I'm writing a manuscript and you are my supervisor, and I have shared a draft manuscript with you, and you are telling me that I've gone through this, I've realized that the background or the title is inadequate. It's too vague. Now, that is the feedback you are giving me. How is that helping me? So you could say that I've been guiding this student, but he's not making progress. But then is that what kind of guidance is that? If you're telling me that the title is too general, then how do I make it specific, or how do I make it concise? So I think the kind of guidance we also get sometimes is also one thing. So, and also the truth is supervisors and mentors are also too busy. These are professors, these are doctors who are also, apart from just supervising you and lecturing, they are also doing consultancies, they are doing projects. So getting enough time for somebody to sit down and show you how to do all these things is also a bit of a challenge. That's why we have organizations like TCC Africa, so that we can pretty much act like shadow supervisor who can also be guiding on the side. But yes, writing can be hard if guidance is not given. How many people have published a paper? Maybe just type in the chat, how many have you published so far? I'll just read before we get to talk, because we are getting there. How many papers do we have? How many papers have you written? How many people have published papers? So from 0 to, so maybe there are people who have published 200 papers, so you can just put the number. How many? So that I get to understand. If there are people who have never published, then, you know, it would be a good thing also to be aware of, you know, the level of discussion we need to have. Okay, some people have published 2, some have published 4. 0 is also a number, because I think that is why we are here. We are here so that we can be able to share our experiences. Some people are in the process, maybe they are just about to start, and they are, I think, yeah, that's why we are here. We are here so that we can be able to guide and see, is it possible for us to give some guidance, so that as you now embark on this journey, you can tap into the experiences of those who have at least published a paper, and then now they are able to guide. Okay, I'm seeing 0, but you need to start. You need to start today. Okay, maybe after this, maybe if you've got a bit of some guidance, you can start. Yeah, so we are at different levels. Some people have published, some maybe have not. I've also published a bit. I think I've published around 40, around 50 maybe now. But yes, if you have not published, don't worry. I was just like you as a master's candidate, and then I published this paper. This was my first paper, and it was out of my master's degree. It was published in 2014. And you can imagine the joy I had when this book was finally online. So it's doable. So if you are here, you've never published a paper, I think there should be no problem at all. That is why we are here. We will share experiences, we will give guidance on how to develop a manuscript. A manuscript is like the raw paper. When you read papers, they are already structured and divided into columns, and there is a very nice editing that is done. When you are sending a manuscript to these people, you just send a plain paper that is, you know, just the way you would send a plain paper, but then it's of course structured in a way that the journal will guide you. So if you've never published, no problem. But writing is very simple, by the way. The first step is just getting in the mood. And then you write your first draft, and then you revise, and then you finish. I think there's nothing hard about this. Very simple. Get in the mood. I don't know how you get in the mood for writing. Who wants to share how they get in the mood for writing? Anybody? How do you get yourself in the mood?
Hello?
Yes, hard paper publication, hard copy publication, yes, is counted. That is publication, we published. Yes, somebody wanted to share how they get in the mood, because it's quite some work, so you need to get yourself in the mood. How do you get yourself in the mood? Hello?
For me, I prefer it
Somebody
in the
wanted to
mornings.
contribute.
In the mornings without any distractions.
Okay. Thank you. So you write in the morning when you know everything is still quiet, and when the activities of the day have not really started interfering. So that is when you settle and start writing. So basically, that is how some of you get in the mood to write. For me, maybe sometimes I listen to music or watch some comedy, and just to get myself, clear my head by just people get, but then you need to get yourself in. And then you write your first draft, and then you revise, and then you finish. Very simple, very simple, just 4 steps. Okay, let's see how simple it is. So for those who are writing their PhD, and I'm writing my thesis right now, sometimes procrastination kicks in from time to time, and sometimes you don't know who is stealing all your motivation for your PhD writing. And then when you remove the mask, you realize, okay, it's just me. I'm the one who is standing on my own way. So I think we need, as somebody has said, I think I've seen something in the chat here, where someone is saying, you get in the mood by, first of all, having a zeal to research on a thought you want to explore. Okay? Now, somebody is listening to music, but then if you get the zeal and now you get yourself, then you realize, okay, I don't want to be my own, I don't want to sabotage my own work, thinking that someone else is doing it. Okay? Yes. So, but however hard it is or however easy it is, you must keep practicing to improve your writing skills. When I sometimes read the first manuscript that I wrote out of my master's thesis and sent for publication, that was rejected in 3 journals because there was no one to guide me. It was finally published, of course, after one of my supervisors took it upon himself to help me write. But I look at the first manuscript that I sent out, my friends, that one was not good. So, but with practice, I'm not saying even right now, I still write manuscripts and they get rejected. I'm not saying that there's every time I send. In fact, I have a manuscript that have sent twice out there, and I think I received the last rejection yesterday. That was the second rejection, of course, based on other factors that we will discuss later on. But it does not mean that you get to a point where you are perfect, that when I send out a paper, nothing will happen. So, but the most important thing here is you must keep practicing. If you don't keep practicing, just write one paper or manuscript and just keep quiet and stop it there, you will not be good at it. And remember, in science, the credit goes to the one who convinces the world, not to the one to whom the idea first occurs. You will read that again when I share this, so that you get to understand. You could be doing very nice research. You could be doing groundbreaking research and getting very good results. But if you're not publishing, there's no way you're going to convince the world. And someone else will one day publish your ideas, and then you will start telling us, oh, that was my idea. I'm the one who came up with that. But then you did not publish it, so you did not convince us. So we are giving credit to the one who first published that work. Think about that. Okay? Now, so when you decide to publish and submit your paper, these are just the general things about publishing before we get into developing the paper. So the abstract, so what do you want to publish? Either you want to publish an abstract, or a short communication, or a full research article. Then you need to choose your forum. What type of journal is best for you? What audience are you targeting? Then when you're talking about the research journal, then you need to talk about the publication guidelines and the article style. These ones we'll talk about. And sometimes when you are submitting your paper, sometimes some journals will tell you that they want you to write a cover letter. Now, this is a sample of a cover letter. Dear editor, you should accept my manuscript because it is awesome. That is I think that's a good cover letter. When you are submitting your proposal, your manuscript, and you are accompanying it with a manuscript with a cover letter that says, dear editor, you should accept my manuscript because it is awesome. In a cover letter, you need to tell us that this has not been published elsewhere. You need to tell us the gap, the research gap it has filled, all that. So we'll think about a bit of this also. But these are just to, just make it look like, these are things that can be done. Now, after submission, you have submitted your paper. After submission, what happens? I want us to understand this so that when we get into developing the paper, you understand that you have to be patient. In the publishing industry, and especially when publishing manuscripts, you have to be patient. If you are not patient, my friends, you have to be patient. So the publication procedure takes 6 to 12 months or even more, sometimes 2 years. There's a paper of mine that took 3 years in the system. The journal was going some and was being restructured. And so for 3 years, my paper was under review. And it was finally published, of course, last year. But then I just want to bring it to your attention that the publication process takes a long time. You see, we have 6 to 12 months or even more, okay? So as an author, the author submits the paper, the editor is assigned to the manuscript. So we have section editors, for example. I'm an editor with +1, and I'm an academic editor for aquatic foods and issues around aquatic sciences and aquaculture and all that is deals with the water and the biology. And so as an editor, when a submission comes in, the general editor now then assigns specific editors. They look through the paper and say, okay, this one is in the field of aquaculture, fine, I'm allocating so and so as the editor. Now, as an editor, for example, when I receive that manuscript allocated to me, then I will look for reviewers. So then I will assign a reviewer or associate editor sometimes, but then I will send it out to reviewers who will decide whether to review or not, because mostly, as we will talk about later, most of the time, review work has been voluntary. So people review for free, except for these days. I will show you where you can now review and even convert your review points into money. I will show you that. So several reviewers inspect and edit the paper. So you will find sometimes it's sent to 2 or 3 reviewers. They give their feedback, they ask questions, they give the recommendations. You don't have to agree to all of them. If you find that they are giving you outrageous recommendations, you just stand your ground and support your viewpoint. You don't have to say that if they tell you to remove this figure, replace it with this, or this argument is not right. If you feel your argument is right, tell them this is right and this is supported by this. So you don't have to accept everything. Then the editor, after the reviewer sends back the comments to the editor will send it to you as an author. You address those comments. Then you send it back to the editor. The editor sometimes sends it back to the reviewer to check whether you addressed all the reviews. Once that is done, the reviewer can now advise the editor whether to accept the paper or not. If the paper is accepted, then the paper is sent for you to review maybe the final time, and then it gets published. But sometimes the paper gets rejected. So if the paper is rejected, of course, you are told to either format it and send it elsewhere, or you can be told to review it and rewrite it or redo it and send it back to the same journal. Okay. Now, what is peer review? Peer review is a review process for scientists by scientists. The purpose is to filter what is publishable as science. Okay. So it also provides researchers with perspective. I want you to understand that the peer review process is not to deter you from publishing. There are younger scholars who think that peer reviewers these are just haters. They just don't want me to publish. That's why they are asking me all these questions. This is why they are standing in my way. They are not standing in your way. They are not trying to deter you from publishing. They are just trying to help you polish the quality of work. Okay? So peer review is used in scientific publications, of course, grant reviews and channel promotion. Most of the time, sometimes when people write grants also, reviewers are also asked to review. But sometimes when you are submitting your paper, you are told to recommend reviewers. You are told, okay, we have a bit of challenge sometimes getting reviewers, so I would want that you recommend 5 or 4 reviewers, either those who can review your paper or those to whom you don't want us to send your paper. And some of you will recommend people like this, the people you play with, the people you work with, or the people in your lab where you do your research. I don't know whether this is right or wrong. Is it right or is it wrong? Okay, I will continue. Maybe people are not here with me. So is it, I don't, sorry?
I'm saying,
yes.
Yeah, if it's about a review, it's better you get a review of somebody you have never interacted with. I think you'll be unbiased. But for a friend, you will be friendly or might not be very critical of your work. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is right, because you want somebody who will give you very objective review, because the essence here is to improve your work. So if you are recommending these people that you go to parties with and your friends and very close associates, then you are trying to influence the outcome of the review. But the review process, the peer review process, is always a very slow one, and sometimes you have conflicting views from different perspectives. So you find reviewers giving you conflicting views, and sometimes even recommending for you to do certain adjustments to your all that. But I want you to listen to what one of the editors from Lancet, I know some of you know what Lancet is. It's one of those good journals, or I don't know what it's called, but not good journal, but it's a journal. The editor says that editors and scientists portray peer review as a quasi-sacred process that helps to make science our most subjective truth telling. But we know that the system of peer review is biased, unjust, unaccountable, incomplete, easily fixed, often insulting, usually ignorant, occasionally foolish, and frequently wrong. Now, this one is coming from an editor. Now, you can understand how frustrated people are with the peer review process because of so many reasons. For those who are published, you might know. We have several things that we call scientific misconduct. So gift authorship is where you gift your friends with authorship. They have not done anything on that paper. You just put their names there because they are either your spouses or they are your friends. So that is not right. Redundant publication, plagiarism, fabrication, falsification, those are misconduct. So those are things that should not happen in science. I think these are things we know. I'm just reminding ourselves. So sometimes you find reviewer one telling you manuscript is really interesting and well written, but then the second reviewer tells you, no, it's not. I don't think it's good. So as an editor, you receive two reviews. One reviewer tells you that this manuscript is really interesting and it's well written, so accept and publish. Then you get another reviewer who tells you, I don't think that manuscript should be published. Just reject that one. So as a reviewer, you are at a loss, so you don't know what to do, and you have to advise, you have to make a decision. So what happens in this case, most of the time, either you will now do the review yourself as an editor and look at the work based on your experience, because mostly it's in your subject area, or you will send it to a third reviewer, and if they give a recommendation for publication or rejection, acceptance or rejection, then you act based on, because now this is the third person. So if two are saying reject, then that would be it. Or if one is saying reject, two are saying accept, then that's how it happens. I will not go into too much of these other details because these are things we can read. Scientists spend their time writing proposals, planning research, undertaking experiments, analyzing data, and reading related articles. The ultimate aim of most scientists is to publish their research findings in professional scientific reports. That is the ultimate goal. So basically, that is what everyone is aiming at. That's why we are here today. Now, what are the hallmarks of good scientific writing? What do you think are the qualities? Of whatever, if you read, you would say, okay, I think this one is a good scientific writing. This one was written so well. What are those qualities of a good scientific writing? Anybody? Anybody? Or somebody has asked about the reviewer and editor, who decides ultimately on whether the work is good for publishing or not. The editor will because mostly editors, we don't review papers. We just do scanning. I just scan to see whether this paper can meet the threshold for publishing in my journal. But then the quality of the work, the quality of the content mostly is interrogated by reviewers. So if a reviewer tells me that I've read through and I've realized this paper cannot be published, as an editor, I'll just, because we trust that they read through the paper. So I will make a decision. Ultimately, the decision depends with the editor, but then this decision is based on the advice from the reviewers. But then let's get back to what would you consider to be the qualities of a good scientific writing? Of course, one has already come on the stage. Any other? Okay, so one of them is accuracy. So you need to get the facts straight and convey them without distortion. So when you are writing your papers, make sure that whatever you are putting out to us is accurate. So accuracy is one of the hallmarks. The other one is clarity. Your style should facilitate understanding of your meaning. So it should not interfere, okay? Then you should be concise. So do not waste your reader's time and patience with wasted words. However, if brevity interferes with clarity, give preference to a clear statement of meaning. Then elegance, make your prose easy to read and interesting. Avoid lifeless words and cliche expressions and monotonous rhythms in paragraphs. So especially when you are writing science, it's different from when you are writing novels. So Just make sure you are clear and you are straight to the point. The forms of scientific communications, these ones I'm not really going to dwell on. Most of us know that we either publish in journals, book chapters, review. So today we are talking about a journal article. This is where we are really focusing on journal articles. We are not going to talk about book chapters and all these others. We are talking about journal articles here. That is the subject of our talk. So we are now going to talk about the journal article. So generally we have the title, the abstract, the introduction, the materials and methods, the results and discussion, and sometimes you have conclusions and recommendations. In some cases you will find some journals will tell you to combine the results and discussion in one section where you put the results and interpret them. Some journals will tell you that you put results separately and then discussion separately. So when you go to the website of a journal, just go and check under instruction to authors. Then you will know whether they want you to separate or combine those two sections. Now we start with the title. The title sums up your work in a single phrase or sentence. Because it is read, it is very important because it is read by the largest number of readers. The title is what will draw somebody to your paper. So it is read by those who read the actual paper in the journal. So those who will download and read that paper. It is also read by those who read it in the secondary or abstracting and indexing databases. So there are people who will just read them in the databases, for example. So maybe on Google Scholar, or Science Direct, or Scopus. So it should be informative, specific, and concise. So the article, the title is the label of your paper, and it is the most read element. I think I've talked about that. It should be brief and have as few words as possible. We are recommending anything below 20 words. Okay, so you need to describe the contents accurately, describe subjects specifically, try to omit verbs. It should be easy to understand and suitable for indexing. Now, omitting verbs, this is a bit controversial somehow, but I've seen people trying to avoid I don't know for what reason, but they are saying that in the event that you realize you want to use verbs like analyzing, just convert that into a noun. So instead of saying analyzing, you'd say analysis of. Determining the effects of, you would say determination of. So that is the recommendation they are giving. I've not really gotten a good answer to that, but I've always seen most books that are talking about writing manuscripts, urging people to avoid to omit verbs and try to convert these verbs into nouns wherever possible. Now, in your title, do not promise more than what is in the paper. And also cut unnecessary words like some notes on, or a review on. So just try to be as clear as possible. And also avoid abbreviations and jargon. Sometimes people put abbreviation in their title and you don't know what that abbreviation is. Somebody puts ABV. You don't understand what ABV is. So you are reading the title and you don't know. Now, if you're going to use a jargon in your title, make sure that you put in brackets a common name or a common term for that jargon, so that whoever is not from your field will be able to understand. The example is the paper that I was showing you. My first paper was about Nile perch. Nile perch is called Lates niloticus in the scientific name. But if I had done that paper, if I had used the title Lates niloticus in the title without putting Nile perch in brackets, somebody who is looking for information on Nile perch and is not from the field of fisheries might just pass that paper because they don't know. If they're looking about, maybe they just want to look about the Nile perch and what they feed on generally in Lake Victoria. My paper is talking about the feeding habits of Nile perch. But if I had not written the word Nile perch and I had only written the jargon Lates niloticus, somebody who is not from my field would not have understood that I'm talking about Nile perch. So think about this even as you write the titles of your papers. Okay. Choose all words carefully. I think these ones I have talked about. Now, when you're formulating the title, most of the time, I would not tell you to kill yourself trying to have a perfect title at the beginning. So you could have what we call a working title, which could be a very sketchy one, and then you move on to try to make it like a better bit, a little bit of some good draft. Then you have a final title. It may even be the last to be written. So just have a working title. Don't struggle with having a perfect title at the beginning. Just have something to guide you and something to work with, and then you try to refine it until you finally get to a final one. Those exercises, no. So sometimes you find there are journals that will ask you that even as you submit your paper, you submit the title of the paper and also what we call a short or a running title. A short title or a running title is like already the title is an abbreviation, is a summary of your of your paper. But imagine a short title is now the summary of that title. Some journals will tell you, and if they tell you, make sure you provide it. Otherwise, it will be they will just truncate your title at some point, and sometimes it will make very little sense. So an example here is we are having the title is Growth, Yield, and Quality Response of Snap Bean Plants to Different Organic Fertilizer Application Regimes. The running title or the short title could be Response of Snap Beans to Inorganic Fertilizer. You see, it still says it's the same thing as the title, but this one does not give too much details. It's just a summary of the first one. So like a general title. So if you are asked when submitting your paper to have a running title or a short title, then make sure you provide it by yourself. Then after the title, of course, we always have the authors. Authors are whoever takes intellectual responsibility for the research results being reported is an author. So an author is somebody who participated in the writing or helped or assisted in some way in the preparation of the manuscript that is being submitted. Mostly people appear, and the perception is always about contribution or cooperation. So if you work together, you have contributed in developing this, then you become part of the authorship. But increasingly, people are more authors are coming to write. I've seen a paper that was written in I think it was part of a big project, and I saw it was written by 25 people. There's a paper we are writing right now out of a certain brainstorming session in scientific writing. It had people from so many places, and the total so far is 51 people who are going to be included in that paper. And in that case, they have decided that the order of authorship is just going to be in alphabetical order. So they're going to arrange the authorship in alphabetical order without saying who becomes first author. If your name starts with A, fortunately, you will become the first author. So the order of authorship also is difficult because to decide, because especially like in Africa, you find everybody wants to be author number one because when they go to the university and for promotion, being author number one gives them more points. So that is a bit of a problem. So how then do you decide who becomes author number one and who becomes author number last, or who appears in the et al? Anybody wants to contribute? How do you decide the authorship number, the order?
I thought it's based on your contribution, the like the amount of work you put into that publication.
Yes, so it's based on the contribution. So whoever contributes most becomes number one, then followed by whoever contributes the second most, in that order. But for students, especially in some of our universities, sometimes you have two supervisors. One does nothing completely. You send your work, he does not even look at it, or he has no idea of what you are doing. And then now, finally, at the point of publishing, he wants his name to be there. How do you navigate through that? Anybody?
I think from the previous works, if somebody's authored so many papers and you have quoted them, then that should be the first one that you put in your paper.
I didn't get that. If somebody has published more papers, then you should put them as the first author.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explain why. What if they did not do anything?
Then there's no point of quoting them or putting them in the paper.
I have not Let me give you a scenario. This is my first paper I'm publishing as a student. I'm working with a supervisor who has published 75 papers. So they have helped me, yes, to do this paper. What do I do with them? Yes, Tom.
Yeah, doctor, I think according to me, I may suggest that the person who initiated the project or who takes more work than the others becomes the first author. For example, as a student, with the supervisors, most of the work is done by me. They only guide me. I think they become the subsequent authors. I become the first author. Thank you.
Okay, Zuta.
Good morning, everyone. Please, I want to share my contribution here. Respect to the first author, the one who should be the first author. That should be based on the amount of the quantity of the work done by the author. The one who does more work should be the first author in that order. So points should be allocated so that based on the one who has the more points should be the first author in that order. Then with respect to the supervisor, you know, some of the institutions, it is part of the process that you must publish with your supervisor. So whether the supervisor has contributed or not, at times you have just to still include his name. If you don't do that, you are not qualified to graduate. So one is a requirement that you must publish with your supervisor. Because you want to graduate, you have to also include your supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we have had a bit of some discussions around that, but ultimately is whoever contributes most becomes author number one. Now, let's talk about what we call the corresponding author. Who is a corresponding author, and must the corresponding author always be the first author? What is your take on corresponding author? Yes, Bankole.
Please let me still talk on that. The corresponding author, it does not necessarily mean the one who contributes most here, but the one who is available, who can collaborate between the authors and then the reviewers, who is always available to receive information from them, then work on it at a faster rate so that you give the feedback to the reviewers. He should be the first author. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Sometimes people think that the first author has always to be, the corresponding author must always be the first author. That is not true. It can be the first author, yes, but the corresponding author is the person who is going to be, the one between the other authors and the journal, or the other authors and the editor or the journal that you are publishing, whatever. And so this is the person who will be receiving the information and communicating it to the other authors and telling them, hey, we received review comments, we need to work on them and return them. You don't want to choose somebody, corresponding author, who is too busy, and maybe they could be receiving so many emails. If a professor is your corresponding author, and this guy is receiving like 20 or 50 emails in a day, it's very easy for an email from the journal to fall through the cracks, and then the journal will just wait for your response, and then they assume you refuse to address their comments, not knowing that maybe the corresponding author did not pass this information to the other author. So make sure that even as you allocate corresponding authors, it has to be somebody who is readily available and somebody who can be able to relay this information between the other authors and the journal as required. Now, one thing about authorship that we need to talk about here is that co-authorship, of course, is where you have authors working with you. So it is the universal responsibility of all, so they have universal responsibility for all content and should read and approve all revisions of a manuscript, all versions of a manuscript. So when we are publishing a paper with you, then all the other authors must read and approve whatever is being sent out there. We don't want to send and then when the paper is already out or when the paper is under review, they start bringing issues and start saying, maybe this paper was sent without my consent. There's something that I needed to add. Yes, Alison, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I would like to get some clarification on the side of the corresponding author. For example, I'm a student with my two supervisors. Should one of them be a corresponding author, or it should be somebody outside three of us? Thank you.
The corresponding author cannot be anybody outside the three of you because this is the person who is going to be talking to the journal. So most of the time, especially if you are the student, I would recommend you become the corresponding author because you are now the one who is going to be when review comments come from the journal. You are the one who's going to address them. You are the one who's going to talk to the other authors and tell them, hey, we have received review comments and we need to address them. So the corresponding author has to be one of the ones in that paper, and most of the time, I would always recommend that the person who contributes the most, if they have the chance to be efficient in talking to the journal and also talking to these other authors, then I would recommend they become the corresponding author. So the corresponding author is the person who is easy and who can easily be relaying information and back and forth. Now, the University of Sheffield came up with a methodology to decide authorship. It might not work in our context, but then this one awards people points depending on your contribution. So the first one is intellectual contribution. How much did you contribute intellectually? Then you say, okay. So then people are given points. So none is 0, one detailed discussion, several detailed discussions, correspondences or longer discussions, basic contributions. So depending on your own thinking of how all these people contributed, then they are awarded points. But then this one means that mostly the first author is the one doing this. So mostly the first author is already decided in most cases because this is the person who did most work or who initiated this whole process. So this is pretty much their project. We are supporting them in this project, or we are supporting them in this publication. Now, then at the end of it, they have 5 sections: the intellectual contribution, then the practical input in terms of data collection and sampling, preparations. And then there's the practical input in terms of data collection. So for example, data processing and analysis. Then there's the specialist input. If they had any specialist input they had put into your work. Then writing input, how much did they help you in terms of writing? Now, all participants are evaluated. Then the condition for authorship is that somebody has to have a minimum of 25 points. If somebody has less than 25 points, we carry those points to the next manuscript by the group, so that we can now transfer them when we are deciding on the order for the authorship of the next paper. So these are things that maybe might not work in our context, but just to show you that the University of Sheffield already has this, and this they are trying to use. Then after the authors' names, we have the addresses. So these authors work in specific universities, so they work in specific research institutions. Yes, Emily.
Just a quick question with the rating. If you go back to the other screen, but if you get less than 25 points, you don't get acknowledged at all. I didn't understand how that works. That you don't get acknowledged at all, or what happens?
You don't become part of the authorship. You can go under the acknowledgement, but you don't become part of the authorship. You are not listed as an author in that paper.
And when they carry it to the next publication, even if it adds up to 25, and yet your contribution to that particular publication is minimal, you'll be listed among the authors.
You'll be listed among the authors because you already had contributed to another one. It's only that you did not meet the threshold. So we are carrying your work that you did the other side and bringing it this side. So even on this side, if you only get 5, then that adds to, because less than 25 would, for example, be 20. So if on this side you only contribute 5, then you're already at 25. So we will say, okay, you're already at 25. So if other people get more points, then they will come ahead of you, but you qualify to be on this paper.
That's interesting. It's debatable. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And that's why I was saying in our context, and especially in our African settings, sometimes it's difficult to convince people about some of this. This is just an example because University of Sheffield came up with this. Yes, Wilfred.
Thank you. Actually, my concern is very close to that one of the previous speaker, because all the publications are independent of each other. So I do not know how your points of, say, 25 or 20 carried forward to the next publication, which is already independent of the previous publication. So like the previous speaker said, it requires more discussion, because I do not agree that is right that you appear in another publication as an author when your contribution there is like 10 points. But because you're adding with the previous point, and these are independent publications, why should we carry weight from the other previous one to the new one where you even contributed less and now you're appearing as an author? That's my observation, similar to the previous concern. Thank you.
Thank you. I think those are very valid points, because we want to include in this one. You did not contribute, or you might not even have an idea of the subject area where we are writing this one. So you might not even have a lot of interest. But because we carried some points from the other side, we want to bring you and make you part of this authorship. It's a bit tricky, but these are areas that need a bit of some discussion. But I was just showing examples of how this is done elsewhere in the University of Sheffield, because most of our universities do not even have an idea of how this is done. But of course, as you've said, it's difficult for you to convince somebody that I was part of the other one, so I have to be part of this because I did some work the other side. That one remained there. So if you did not qualify to be on the other one, you also have to contribute here for you to qualify to be here. So I think that should be. Then after the authors, of course, we have the addresses or where this work was done. So we need to give the addresses where the work was done, to give credit to the institution, so the institute or department, for example. We know how. I will just run through one of the manuscripts I'm working on right now so that we get to understand how all these work together. So after that, then we have, of course, the addresses of where, and most of the time it's just the university, for example, or the department of something, this university, PO box, then maybe the country, and maybe the email address. Just the addresses of where these things were done so that you can reach these authors. Then we have the abstract. The abstract should be able to stand on its own, and it's mostly a very short one. So sometimes you find some journals will tell you, now this depends on, you need to go and check other instructions to authors so that you see the length of abstract that is allowable by that paper, by that journal. Some journals will tell you our abstracts are only 200 pages. Some journals will tell you can extend it to 300 pages. Some will tell you we only accept abstracts that are 150 pages, for example. So it depends on the journal. So you need to be guided by what the journal requires. And it should be able to stand on its own. So it should have a bit of an introduction, a bit of, talking about the methods that were used in general, a bit of some results, and just the key results, and a bit of discussion and interpretation. So imagine in 250 words or in 300 words or 200 words, you have to put all that. Then at the end of it, of course, at the end of the abstract, there are always keywords that are used for indexing. And somebody sometimes asks, how then do you decide on the keywords? I always tell them, there's a paper you're writing, and you can imagine that when you go onto Google Scholar or when you go onto a database where this paper is and you want that paper to come up, what keywords will you key in there when trying to look for this specific paper? So you can imagine that you are not the one who published this paper, but you want to get information that is contained in the current paper you are writing. What keywords would you use when searching for that information? Then that is what you put here as keywords. Now, it should have no reference to literature. So in your abstract, you don't refer to literature. You don't say, Outa et al. 2017. No. There should be no abbreviations, and especially those that cannot be understood. There should be no reference to tables or figures. So I don't expect in your abstracts to start saying as summarized in figure 3 or as summarized in table 1 below. No. Then there should be no conclusions that are not substantiated in the paper. Then what are the common mistakes in abstracts? Sometimes people use different fonts, sometimes duplicated words, punctuation errors. These are the normal things. Now, sometimes people even use numerals to start a sentence. You should not use numerals to start sentences. So if you are
using 12, then you just use TWELVE, not 12 like 1, 2. Okay, so these are some of the things that you have to be aware about. Then at the end of the abstract, there is always the keywords. I think I'm not talking about this again. I've talked about the keywords. Keywords are mostly used for indexing. And some people say that you can borrow a lot from the title, but this title is already going to be in the index. The title is automatically going to be included in the database. So if you want to expand the reach and the visibility of your paper, you need to think about other keywords that are within the paper that maybe not essentially in the title. You can borrow from the title, but don't borrow too heavily from the title. But again, also ask people the same question. If you are going to look for your paper, if you are going to look for a paper on the internet that has the information as the ones you are putting in this paper, what keywords would you key in to get this specific paper? Those are the keywords you need to put for us there. Then after that, we have the introduction. So the introduction is pretty much like the background of the study that we are talking about in the proposal. You need to start broadly painting your problem into, the context of what is happening, the problems that are there, because the problem with this, the difference we have with this one and the one we did in the proposal. In the proposal, you had the luxury of words. You can write them broken down into the background, the statement of the problem, the justification, the significance, all that you could be able to write them because you have sections for them. But in a journal, in a manuscript, most of the time you have to compress all that, sometimes in a page or in 2 pages or 2.5 pages, where you are going to give us the broader perspective, give us, orient us in your field so that we get to understand what the problem is, what is already known, what is not known, what have other people done, what is the gap, why is it important for you to do this study, and what are the basic objectives for the study. So basically, in the introduction for your paper, this is where you are going to put everything: what you did, why did you do it, what did you do, why did you do it, how. But the how, most of the time, you don't really, because there is a section for methodology or materials and methods. But in the introduction is where you are going to give us, paint a picture of what is happening, and so that we get to understand why your study is important. Okay? Now, the introduction, let me just put all this here so that I can use them to explain. The introduction defines the scope and limitations of your work. So let's give an example. In this study, we are looking at the effects of alcohol on life expectancy. So what did we study? So that is what is within our scope. So in the introduction, we need to make sure that we clearly state that only men were surveyed, for example. We need to clearly state that the study took 10 years. We need to state that we only did 3 classes of drinkers. I don't know how non-drinkers are drinkers, but fine. But then we also, in the introduction, we need to also make the readers understand that we understand that medical histories can also affect life expectancy. However, they were not considered in the current study. We also need to make them understand that we also know that other effects such as exercise could also interfere or have an influence on life expectancy, but we did not consider them. They also need to know, we also need to make them know that we know that even women may not experience the same effects, but in this study, we only surveyed men. So in your background is where you're going to talk about all these things, so that we get to understand how much do you understand of the problem you're trying to solve. And we need, as we said, even in the proposal, a little bit of some historical background so that we get to understand. I'm not going to talk about this because this is pretty much what I've talked about: announcing the topic, motivation to understand the study, to do the study, most important findings in the literature. So basically, this is what has already been done, what is already known. Then this way, we are also going to state the research problem. Why, what is the gap that is there that necessitated the writing of this paper? And then it also gives, of course, a review of a few other chapters. Now, do not start by writing the introduction, and I will tell you why. It is one of the most difficult parts of a paper to write. Very difficult, because this is where you are going to do a lot of literature review. Of course, when you do a good review, it's going to, you might end up writing the whole paper. You start with the introduction, write all the way down, and then when you finally have your paper done, you have a draft, you read the introduction and realize whatever I've written in the introduction does not introduce very well all the results that I have reported in this paper. So I just want to pull down this introduction and start it again and write something that really introduces the subjects, the results that I have reported here. So my suggestion is that you don't start by writing the introduction. It will sometimes derail you, and then the procrastination will start kicking in. So start by writing the easier parts to write, and we will talk about which are the easier parts to write. But my suggestion is that you don't start by writing the introduction. It will sometimes, there's a lot of work that goes here. There are easier parts to write that will now start motivating you. The results, you have them. The materials and methods, you already have them. So why don't you start with what you have as you move towards what you don't have? The main purpose of the introduction is to state the research problem clearly, establish your hypothesis, provide justification for your work. I think we've talked about this. They swear they're saying you state the methods and results briefly. Some people always, when I say that, they ask me, but there's a section where I'm going to write the materials, and also there's a section for results. I have seen papers, maybe just in my field, where people have in general said, maybe at the introduction, towards the end, the objective of this study was to do this and this and this, and this, or using this methodology, or maybe this methodology was applied, and you just put one, because there's always the big question you're asking yourself. You could have several results, but there's one big result that summarizes everything. Towards the end of the introduction, you are allowed to put that one word or a few sentences explaining the general, the big picture, or the main result that came out. A bit controversial and a bit debatable, but I've seen it written in papers where somebody narrates all that, the problems, the justification, the gaps that are there. Then they talk about the methodology just in one word or two words, or just in a general sentence. And then they talk about the results in a general sentence without putting any details, okay? Yeah. Then here you describe your research objectives clearly and simply. Of course, these are things I've talked about. So it is the most difficult section to write, as I've told you already. So this is just the summary. I'll not read again the summary because I'll be repeating what I have talked about already. So you will read that when you get to understand, when you get these materials. But it provides enough. You need to provide enough background information to allow readers to understand and evaluate results without reference to previous publications on the topic. Just based on what you've told me in the background, I should be able to evaluate the results of the work I'm reading without having to go out of this paper to read another paper for me to understand the result that you have presented. Okay, so how do you write it? Start broadly within your field, putting your topic into a wider context in order to orient your reader, and then you should quickly and briefly focus on your specific research problem. Let's say we are talking about microbial resistance, for example. You don't just, and let's say we are focusing among children of maybe children below 5 years. No, maybe those might not have had enough antibiotics. But let's say among people living with diabetes, as an example. So you don't just start talking about microbial resistance among people living with diabetes directly. It's difficult for me to understand even where you came from. So you need to start by what is this microbial resistance? What is the situation, worldwide? What is the situation in Africa, for example? What is the situation in Kenya? What is the situation in the general population? And then you bring down to now, very quickly, now you focus on microbial resistance among people living with diabetes, for example. And then now you need to explain to me why you chose those people, what is still not known about them, what has been done so far, all that. But then you need to start from broad as you come, as you narrow down, okay? It should summarize the background research while pointing out what is lacking in the published literature. Where is the gap in knowledge? I think the background needs to bring that out very clearly. When I share, you will get this link. You can easily just click on this link and you will see how do you read a research paper effectively. These are links, so we are not going to watch this video. It's going to take a bit of time. Then there's also a link on how to write a literature review, or writing an introduction. You will also go and read that. Materials and methods, I'm not going to dwell so much here because we already talked about this in the proposal section. It's the same thing. It's just narrating what you did, and each field each person in their own fields have different methodologies that they use. So you can use a questionnaire, you can be doing experiments, you can be, just maybe doing some engineering work, you could be developing prototypes. So really here, there's no one silver bullet that you can say that this is how to approach methodology in all the fields. So based on your own field, I think it's good for you to, just be able to, work with what happens in your field. But also in your field, there are methodologies. People, you are reading certain papers as you write yours. So you will be able to also borrow. You can easily borrow from their methodologies and just just see how you can customize them to work for you. Now, the materials and methods section of methodology should enable readers to repeat your work for verification, because it is reproducibility is a problem in science right now. You find people doing research, but then their work is not reproducible. So you get to their work, their methodologies are not so clear. So even if you're provided with the same materials and the same resources, you cannot repeat their work. And that's a problem. And it also should enable the readers to judge the adequacy of the method and the reliability of the results. If you tell me, if I read through your materials and methods section, and then I read some results and find that the results you are providing could not have been obtained using the methods that you reported, then I will even start doubting those results. If you are telling me that I used this method, and then the results I'm getting cannot be obtained using the methodology that you stated, then I will start doubting those results. I will say, you are not able to, you cannot get these results out of the methods you used. So you are lying. These results were not out. So I will start doubting those results. So make sure that when you are writing your result, your materials and methods section, you put enough details and be as accurate as possible. And as I said, if you're using certain protocols in your field that are already known and are already published, you don't need to go into the details of saying 25 grams of magnesium or manganese was dissolved in 20 liters of water. No, just state the protocol, state the methodology, and give reference. So if somebody wants details, then they can go and check. One criterion for this is sufficient details need to be given, and so you need to consider readership and their knowledge carefully and give details accordingly, okay? So the methods are closely scrutinized in peer review. If a reviewer doubts that the experiments are repeatable, the manuscript will be rejected no matter how wonderful the results are. So make sure. Be careful with the details. Your reputation as a researcher is on the line. So instructions to authors section is a place you need to check. When you are writing your paper, when you have decided on the journal, and tomorrow we'll talk about the journal selection strategy. How do you select the right journal for your paper? We'll talk about them. And once you make that decision, you need to already start thinking about how then do I structure my manuscript to adhere to the requirements of the journal. Otherwise, the journal can throw back your paper, even if it's a good paper and you did not structure it the way they wanted. They will just throw it back at you. Then you need to watch out for correctness and use of numbers, spelling, and punctuations. These ones are things I think I've talked about. So you also need to order your information in a certain way, okay? So you need to, because when you are going to the results section, you are also going to report these results according to the method section. So method 1 should give us result 1. Method 2 should give us result 2. So make sure that you have them ordered in a certain way so that it's easy for me to follow even as I read your work. The suggestion is that you use simple past tense to describe what you did. So what was done, and most of the time you either use active and passive voices to enhance clarity. Depending on your own judgment, you can decide to use to either use simple or active or passive or active voices. Now use syntax carefully. And the example is after standing in hot water for an hour, the flasks were examined. What question will you ask yourself when you read that as in the methodology section of a paper? As a reviewer, which question will you ask? Or what meaning does that give you? Anybody wants to give their view?
I think the language itself, the word standing, but use the word immersed instead of standing.
Okay, any other person? If you read, if in the materials section is written, after standing in hot water for an hour, the flasks were examined.
I think probably you could rewrite it and say the flasks were placed in hot water for an hour and examined. That's what I'm thinking.
Yes, the question here would be, what was standing in hot water? Is it the researcher or is it the flasks? Yeah, so basically, we want to be very clear so that people don't ask those questions, because after standing in hot water for an hour, then somebody will say, okay, maybe the researcher was standing in hot water for an hour and then he examined the flasks. So, be very clear without, don't leave any doubts in the heads of whoever is reading your work. Be meticulous. Check, can a colleague repeat the experiment based on the description given? The writer is often too close to the method and omits details glaringly obvious to him or her. And most of the time you are told, do not mix in the results. So sometimes when you will find, when you go to the results section, you find people again starting to talk about the methods that were used to obtain those results. No. Okay. These ones are just the normal ones. If you are doing, let's say, if you are doing natural sciences where you have, study site, for example, study species, or maybe you are doing a study in a specific location, they want you to give a map and maybe maybe a geo references of those maps, all these things describing your study site and why did you decide to choose that study site, for example. All that goes into the details of the methodology. So it's quite a bit of something. You're going to read those others. I really don't think these are ones that I don't read word by word. But this section should be chronological and informative, providing details of the experimental design, details of the controls used, including their purpose, details of the data recording techniques, exact quantities and purities of reagents. Sometimes in chemistry, you find sometimes the purity of the reagent also could influence the results. Then technical specifications of the apparatus, specific methods of sample preparation, accurate nomenclature. So if you are going to use certain organisms, then you need to really give their accurate nomenclature, precise details on any subject, samples including the study, and the details of the sampling protocol. So if you use certain sampling protocols that are already published out there, for example, then you just need to cite so that I don't have to go and read them again. When do you write this? The recommendation is that you start with this. So when you are writing your work, the recommendation is that you start with the materials and methods, because it is not difficult to write, because it is just narrating what you did. You have the results, because you cannot be writing a paper if you don't have the results. How did you obtain these results? So just explain to us how you obtained these results. And then the next thing is write for us the results. So the suggestion is that you start with these materials and methods, narrate how you got to these results. I think, okay, now we are in the results. The results is the key part of your article, because everything hinges here. You started writing this manuscript because you had some results that you wanted to report to us. Otherwise, you could not be writing this. So be sure that you give us, it must be logical, easy to follow, and correct. So when you are writing a results section, start by giving us the bigger picture or an overall description of the hypothesis tested and the data results that support the claim you make. So there could be one big answer. You would have several, your results section could be having different results, maybe even graphs and others. But then there is that bigger picture. You need to start by giving us the bigger picture, and then you now get into talking about the other smaller results. You need to give details of significant results, not insignificant ones. So if a variable is not influential, or if the difference is not significant, mention it, but not give a lot of details. I'm not saying that if you find that the difference is not significant, or if a variable is not really influential, that you don't mention it completely. Mention it, but because it is not influential, don't really give a lot of details, but if it is, then of course you need to give a bit of some detail. Now you need to use tables and figures to present processed data. not all, of course, not all data need figures and tables. You know, many results can be given in text. And do not mention everything in text and then you repeat it in a table or you repeat it again. You repeat it as a figure. You can just do a little bit of some summary. You can point us to the highest and the lowest values, and then you refer us to table 3 or figure 1. Now, if you have a figure or a table in your document, make sure you refer to it. If you don't refer to it, then I will not understand why it is there in the first place. So make sure that when you have a figure or a table, make sure you refer to it. Otherwise, if you don't refer to it, I will keep asking, why is this table in your document in the first place? So that is what needs to be done. But then you need to decide when to use a table, when to use a figure, because sometimes when some results can easily be appreciated if it's in form of a figure. Or if you are talking about growth rate, for example, and you want to, even in economics, when you want to talk about the rates of inflation that has been happening over the years, and you just narrate it in words, it's difficult for me to follow. But then if you draw a trend graph, then I'll see that, okay, between this year and this year, there was a rise, and then it fell down, and then it rose again. So those are the things. So decide on what you want to demonstrate. Depending on what you want to pass across, you can decide on whether to use a table or a figure or just to narrate in word. Now, when do we write this? After the materials and methods section. Okay, so you can write, because you have the materials and methods, you have the results, because that is why you are writing. So you need to write the materials and methods and then follow by the results. After writing the materials and methods, write the results and then discuss those results. Okay, then do not start with the methods. In your results section, you find some people, when they are now coming to present the results, they again start talking about the methods that were used to get those results. You already explained those methods, so don't go back to the methods. Just give us the results. Do not start with methods again. Then sometimes people even start giving number of materials or number of birds examined, for example. You give the same information twice, like giving it in text and then in table or figure. Avoid those things, okay? Now, do point out significant trends and differences, facts supported by numbers. Direct the reader's attention. Now, in directing my attention is where you are directing us to a figure or a table or a chart, whatever. We can only be directed if you direct us. Otherwise, if I'm reading your work and I'm not directed on when to look at the table, then I'll just see the table and I might not even know what it means on that document, okay? Now, you need to give meaningful statistics. The example here is in 33.3% of the mice, the treatment was effective. No change was observed in the condition of the other 33.3%, and the third mouse escaped. You might think you're providing statistics. There's no statistics you are providing here. You only had 3 mice, and you gave them treatment. And one of them, the treatment was effective. In one of them, no change was observed, and then the third mouse escaped. So if you are trying to put all these percentages and you're only dealing with 3 mice, you could be thinking you're providing statistics, but it's not meaningful. So that's why we are talking about you need to give meaningful statistics. Of course, we've talked about tables and figures. In most cases, and I think this is a standard procedure that for tables, the caption should come on top of the table, and for figures, the caption should come below the figure. And make sure that all your axes are labeled accordingly, so that it's easier for us to know. If you're using trend lines, for example, just make sure you differentiate so that it's easier for me to know this one is representing this and this one is representing the other, so that I don't have to go around fidgeting, asking what is this, what is that. No. Okay, so I don't think I need to go here. This is just the summary. You will read that summary. I've talked about it already. Then after the results, we go to the discussion. The discussion is where you explain what the data mean and compare to what others found. Basically, that is what is there. I really don't need to talk about it so much. It's about, I found that this one was significantly higher than this. Why do I think that is the case? Why is my data appearing the way it is appearing? What does it mean? And what have other people found? Now, what I always tell people is, here is the opposite of the introduction. Here you start narrowly by interpreting what you did right now, and then you start going broad by comparing what other people did. In the introduction, remember, you started broad, and then you narrow to the specific problem. Here, you start narrow, and then you start broadening by comparing your results to those of the other people. But start by interpreting your own understanding of the results. Most rejections are due to faulty discussions. That is what we call the squid technique, is where an author is unsure of what their data mean, and they hide in a protective cloud. So what they do is they speculate a lot. It's good to be forthright sometimes. Of course, speculating is not bad. In science, we speculate. You would say, the possible reason for this could be this, or this could be. But then if you speculate too much, then we start doubting whether you understand what your data means. So that is one thing you need to think about. But then also, when comparing your work with those of others, if there are people, you can compare the works that agree with yours. But you can also go ahead and even compare if you find that there are people who wrote, who found results that were different from the ones that you found. Mention that, bring it out that, however, so and so got different results. They reported different results and give reasons why you think those results were different. Okay, this is what you do. Start with a very short reminder of the purpose of the key result. So if there was that big result, that big question you asked yourself, start by interpreting that. Then you need to start from specific and progress to a more general discussion. So note that the direction is opposite from that in the introduction. So here we start from specific, then go towards general. In the introduction, we started general and then came the specific. Okay. This may also be the place to confront potential critics. So this is where you explain, if, for example, there's something that happened in your data that you think somebody will be asking questions about, then this is where you need to explain in your discussion. That is because somebody would see some anomalies in your data and they would be like, why am I seeing this table looking a bit weird? But then in the discussion, they will get to understand, okay, now I understand. This is why there's an explanation to why the table looks like that. Okay. Here is also where you could tell the reader of the limitation of the study, draw their attention to potential problems, and tell the reader reasons how you addressed them. And one example is the first paragraph could be the key results and what they mean. So you could start by writing the key results. What are the main results? Because as I said, you could have other smaller results that you can also discuss later. But the first paragraph could be talking about the key results and what they mean. Then the second paragraph could be, how do these findings relate to the results of the previous work? Then the third one could be potential drawbacks and their solutions. So what were the potential drawbacks? Maybe somebody is not muted. Thank you. So then the last one could be the summary of results and conclusions. Sometimes you find some journals will tell you to just have a specific section on conclusions and recommendations. So if that is the case, then you don't conclude in your discussion. You get a separate section for this. Okay. I'm not going to talk about all that again. When do you write the discussion? After the results, towards the end after the results. So they may be written together depending on what the journal requires. Some journals will tell you that we want you to combine results and discussions. So you will put the results and interpret them, put the results and discuss them, put the results and discuss them. Some journals will tell you that you put the results separately and then the discussion separately. Now, go under the tab written instruction to author so that you get to understand how you are expected to do it, whether you are expected to combine them or you are expected to separate them. Okay. Okay. Now, after that, of course, we have acknowledgements. We all know acknowledgements is where we are appreciating those who maybe there are people who helped us in our work, but they did not form part of authorship, or there are organizations that supported us, maybe by funding us or by allowing us to work in their laboratories or work with their teams. So, you need to thank. And I think there's somewhere, so permission, you need to ask for permission. So maybe you got permission or approval to carry out your research or any significant help with methods, field or laboratory work, reagent analysis, financial supports or grants received, you need to ask these people. You need to ask these people if they want to be included. Sometimes you can acknowledge people. There's a problem. We did a project and we published a paper and acknowledged somebody, but then by the time we were acknowledging this guy, the people had fallen out. I think the top researchers had fallen out, and he did not want anything to do with that project anymore. And we already acknowledged him without asking him. When the paper came out, he had a big problem with us that we mentioned his name in that project. So you need to ask people that you are not really, you helped us in the field. We are not going to make you an author, of course, but is it possible for us to acknowledge you in the paper? Do not wish to thank, simply thank. You realize people say we would like to thank, we wish to thank. Who is stopping you? Just go ahead and thank. Okay, I'll explain why, give reason why the person is included in the acknowledgements. Okay, so you just don't write, we acknowledge, so just say, why do we acknowledge them? What did they do to be acknowledged? Okay, then the appendices can be anything. It could be the questionnaires you used, maybe the program code, statistical details, extra data, anything else. You can always put in the appendix. If there's supplement, if there's any additional information that you want people to get from your paper, or that can make them understand your paper better, but you did not put it in the main paper. Then the references we talked about. References are just the information that that you used. So if you cited certain works, you need to put them in the reference list. And as I said, make sure you use reference management too. So in the chat, you can write for me the reference managers you are using, or if you are still citing your papers manually, just let us know. Who is citing their papers manually? Okay, so just tell us which reference managers are you using, but you need to learn how to use. I use Mendeley, but I also sometimes use Zotero. I've never used EndNote, but I've used Mendeley for a long time, since 2012. So think about using any reference tool, any reference manager, instead of doing manual referencing. Okay, so these ones, I'm not going into this. This is what we are going to talk about tomorrow. There's only one thing I want to bring to your attention before I show you something. Now, what are the steps to organizing your manuscript? You remember, I told you that I will tell you when to write which section. You need to start by preparing the figures and tables, and they have to be there and clearly captioned already. You don't want to start writing, and then you have to stop halfway to go and edit a graph, or you want to go and generate a table, and you're already writing. That will start derailing you, okay? So, some people are still doing manually. This is difficult. You need to think of how to use a reference manager. And you can be taught, part of what I also teach people is how to use reference management tools, because then with the reference management tool is when you cite, it cites it automatically for you, and then it adds it automatically to the reference section. So it's not a difficult thing. So the first step is to prepare the figures and tables so that they're ready. After that, you need to write the methods. Remember, I told you this is what you write. Prepare your tables and figures and caption them and put them somewhere on the side. Then write the methods, because the methods are not very difficult to write. It's just narrating what you did. Then after that, write up the results section. After writing the results section, write the discussion. This is where you are discussing the results now. Then write a clear conclusion. Have you seen the introduction? You've not written an introduction, because you want to write an introduction that will introduce all these other sections that we have written. Then after that, I wanted to write a compelling introduction. Okay? Then write an abstract. After that, compose a concise and descriptive title. You see where the title is coming. You could have been working with a title, but then now you are reading through the whole paper, now asking yourself, how do I put a title that captures everything that is in this paper? Then select keywords for indexing. We've talked about that. Then write the acknowledgements, write the references, and then submit your paper. It's that simple. Thank you so much for this. And now we are going to have a short session of a plenary session where we are going to have discussions, and I'm not going to answer questions. We are going to discuss. So everyone is going to participate and give us their perspective. But then guess who is looking at memes instead of submitting manuscripts? Okay, yeah, it's you. So thank you. And then I will stop this one here. And if there are questions or feedback or any comments, then we start now addressing them. Yes, Tongo.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor, for the precise and clear explanation on how to write a manuscript. Mine, you have said that you don't need questions, but I wanted some clarification on maybe even if not you, other members. Now, if I am to write a review paper before going for data collection, of course, if my proposal is approved, and then I have to begin writing a review paper, does it follow the same? And if it does, what next about the results section and the conclusions or the discussions? How is it done in a review paper? That's what I wanted to get some. Thank you.
Okay, anybody wants to respond to that? Emily?
I'm not responding to that. I want to ask a question. I don't know if it's related. Can I ask?
Okay.
Just based on these steps, my question was, for instance, when you respond to a call, especially for conference, you're not publishing, maybe you'll publish later, you will have submitted the abstract first. So then when you're now doing this, when you're organizing the manuscript, my assumption is you'll follow the same process. Would you then work with the abstract you had written, or will you change this?
The assumption in the one I was showing is you are writing a manuscript that you want to submit. So this is a manuscript you are submitting to a journal. But then sometimes, you will find sometimes that you have journals when these papers will be published. You are going to a conference, and then these papers will be published as, for example, as conference proceedings. Then that one you have, of course, to. Oh, somebody wants to see this. Those journals will be the papers will be published as part of the conference proceedings. So of course you have to remain within the relevance of the conference. But when this still does not change anything. You have your tables, you have your methods. You still need just to structure your manuscript in the order in which it should appear. I'm not restricting anybody to follow these steps. I'm just telling you how to organize them, because this is what has worked, especially for me, because I realized that sometimes I have to move back and forth between pages trying to prepare a figure and put a caption. I'm already in the process of writing. It derails me a lot. So I realized that when I have my figures and tables already developed and kept somewhere, then I start by writing the methods, because the methods is just narrating how I got the results that I'm presenting to you. And then now I write the results because I have those results anyway. And then I write the discussion. I find this is what works for me. If somebody says that, for me, I always start with the introduction. That's how I start with the introduction. Then I go to I just follow the paper the way it is. If that works, that's fine. But for me, this is what works. So if you had submitted your paper to a conference, and the conference has its own way, and maybe the organizers have given you ways in which you need to prepare your manuscript, follow what they want, because they are the ones who are going to publish this paper. Otherwise, they will tell you, you're not publishing that conference is under our conference proceedings, because you refused to follow what we told you. So it depends on what is required. So just adhere to what they require. Somebody has asked about how to write a review paper, and whether the review paper also follows the same procedures, the same steps as I have demonstrated here. Yes and no. It depends on the kind of review you are doing. There are several reviews. There's what we would call meta-analysis, where you are also even going to extract data from other papers and analyze and even write your own things, like get data, analyze and write. But this data is based on what is on the internet. You're not collecting it yourself. There's, for example, scoping review, where you are just going to give us what is happening right now. There's a narrative review, where you are just going to write narratives and just narrate, giving us to understand what is happening in the field right now. There is a critical review, where you are critiquing what is already out there. You are critiquing data, critiquing literature, and so it depends on the kind of review you choose to do. But let's say you've decided to do even a scoping review. There are methodologies for that, for literature review. And you have to state how you did. Let me give you an example of a review paper that I'll just give an example here. But pretty much these days, even for review, you need to have the results and discussion, mostly the results and discussion mostly combined. Let me just give an example here of one that any other person could also just come in. Mine is, I'm also just giving some of this, but as I said, I don't have all the answers. Anybody wants to also, I'm looking for an example of a review paper. Okay, so I'm giving an example here. Let me just give you an example of a review paper that we did. I'm seeing, yes, Ruben.
Yeah. So I want to add something to the systematic review. So like what you said is true, and you also want to see your example. But one thing I also know about systematic reviews and meta-analysis, they also follow the normal primary research that we go to the field and take data. But what differentiates it a bit is just their methodology. Their methodology is a bit different from the normal papers, primary research that we do. Like example, their methodology is more of inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, the papers you use, how you got the paper, how you even analyze them, the framework you follow, like the Prisma framework and all those things. They are the difference between, but I think they are, when you want to publish their paper, their result and everything is the same as what you explained before. That's how to work for me. Like what you explained is exactly how I've been doing my own. When I finish, I write the result and discussion together. Then the conclusion and the conclusion different, but discussion will be added to the result. So result and discussion, then write the conclusion, then you are done. Then you write the abstract. You can prepare your manuscript like normal research. It's not all that different much from the normal research we do, like the primary research that you explained before. So that's the few things I just want to add. Thank you.
Thank you for that addition. And indeed, it's a good thing you have said that it does not differ so much, except that the methodology you are going, because you are going to give us some results. Otherwise, you are going into the internet to mine and also get other people's work, critique it, get information. And then at the end of it, what results are you bringing and how are you interpreting these results? So let me just give you an example of a scoping review. This was not a meta-analysis, so it was just some review of a paper. So this one is a review on, I don't know whether this is, yes. This one is a review. So we have an intro, we have, of course, an abstract here. So for those who have not written, when you are writing a manuscript, you don't need to format it in ways that people think, oh, okay, I always read papers that have 3 columns. Do I have to put it in 3 columns before I send it? No. So you have the title here, you have the authors here, you have the affiliation. These days we even have an ORCID ID. I'll talk about this tomorrow. Then you have the corresponding author, then you have the abstract. At the end of the abstract, we have our keywords here. Then you have an introduction. So you see the introduction here, we started, the global agricultural sector is facing, so this one was we were doing a review here. But you see that we are starting globally before we come down to the review we want to do. The introduction goes down, just explaining all these things. Then we have materials and methods in a review. So the materials and methods we are talking about, of course, the primary objective of this scoping review is to examine whatever. Then we talked about the different methodologies we are using, and then how we conducted literature search, the databases where we got our literature from. So then open access, we have explained all that. And then we've also put out the terms that we used, the strings that we used for our search, so that somebody gets to understand. Then the total number of papers we got, the ones that we were putting in, the ones that we screened, the ones that we finally included. The Prisma is not here because we are expected, this journal expects us to submit figures separately from the main text. So that is why we separated. But then we have the Prisma statement, the process of how to do the inclusion, the exclusion criteria, all this. And then now we have our results down here. So the results are, what did we find? The results and indication. What did we find out of all the papers that we analyzed? So we just put all the results, the different results under different sections. And then down here, we have our conclusion and recommendations. And then we have the references. So here we can see we have the statement, the conflict of interest, availability of all these. These ones are just added based on what whatever requires. But basically, this is what it looks like. So for peer review, for a review paper, it might follow the same procedures, only that now the methodology, you are not going to collect your data. This data you are getting from other people. So you need to tell us, where did you get it from? I got it from papers. Were these papers obtained? Where did you obtain these papers from? How did you analyze them? What were the inclusion and exclusion criteria? How did you decide that, fine, I'm including this paper in the study and this one I'm not including? All those ones. But pretty much there is not so much difference. Any other comment? We are drawing closer to our finish. I have seen some questions. What is the preferred referencing style for a manuscript? A very good question. What happens is each journal will tell you whether you need to use APA, whether you need to use Nature, whether we need to use Chicago. So then what happens is, that is why I was saying you need to know how to use reference managers, because if you know how to use a reference management tool, then that will help you. You don't need to even do any formatting. Once as you are writing, and when you start citing, it will cite for you automatically, so you don't have to struggle that you are trying to come up with, you are trying to edit the references to appear in a certain way. It automatically will just come. Let me just show you an example here for those who are still doing their papers manually. I think it's not. It's just a waste of your time. Sorry, I'm just moving some things out of the screen so that I get to demonstrate something. I want to demonstrate to you, for those who have not used, I know maybe I'm talking about reference managers and somebody is asking, what are those reference management tools? As I have said, you can use Zotero, you can use Mendeley, you can use whatever works for you. But I want to show you, for example, if you're using Mendeley, let's say you are typing something and then you want to cite. You just put space. If you have installed Mendeley, then you just come under references. And Mendeley is a free tool. Just go on the internet and search for Mendeley. Let me just put in the chat the name of that tool so that you can be able to download it here. So for those who have not, just go and choose and look for that reference manager. Then you can be able to download it and install it in your computer. Then you can now use it for citing. If you have a bit of a problem, I can guide you later on how to use it. Yes, yes, Ruben.
Yeah, so I want to add up something about the referencing manager. So far I've been using Mendeley and Zotero, but recently, 1 year ago, I found a tool called MyBib, and I use MyBib and compare it to the traditional Zotero and the Mendeley we have been using, and MyBib was so easy to use, very, very easy. So I'll also recommend those that maybe they are not so much familiar with Mendeley and Zotero, or they are not familiar with any of them, they can use MyBib. It's also totally free. You can also, one thing I like about MyBib tool is that you can share your references with another researcher. Let's say I'm a researcher in, let's say, US, and my friend is in, let's say, Togo or somewhere. I can send the references to the person will also work on it. Send it back, we can communicate through that too. It's very useful very, very useful too. We call it MyBib citation. It's just online, you can just Google it and you find it. You can also, it's having all the references star. I think they have about 100+ references star so far. Yeah, thank you.
So kindly just put it for us so that we get to know it. Maybe
Okay.
just put it in the chat, because some of us would. I've also not used it. I've just been using Zotero and Mendeley, so that will be useful. Yes, Alison.
Yeah, I also want to supplement on the use of the software for referencing. Currently, I'm using Mendeley, and it's very effective. The most important thing the other colleagues who have not been using should know is that it's a matter of downloading it on your laptop. And then while working, typing your work, you have to open Mendeley. You have to open perhaps your Google Scholar or any other software that they're using to get the information. And then your word page where you are typing. And that is we work currently. Where you want to cite, you download the work. You can save it in your download page. Then you just cite, and at the end, after finishing the work, you can automatically, generate the referencing list. And you can also order. You can use the Mendeley to order it, to put it according to the referencing style that the journal or your institution recommends you to use. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And also thank you, Ruben has put it. It's called MyBib, so you can. I'll also try. I'll go and check what it is, so that I can see. Some of these things you never know. You could find you've been using a tool for a long time, and then you find another one and say, okay, this one I think is easier or it's better. So I'll try it out. Ruben, thank you for this. I just wanted to demonstrate for those people who are not using any reference managers and you are citing manually. You are doing a lot of disservice to yourself, because then you are making your life almost impossible. I'm just showing you. I'll just show you here. So if you are writing, let's say you are writing a document and then you want to cite, what you do is, this is whatever you are typing. When you want to insert a citation here, you just come and click insert citation. When you have installed Mendeley and then you install MS Word plugin, you will now come here and insert. When you click on insert citation, it will give you the option to insert a citation. So when you click on insert citation, then it allows you now to open your library. So you can go to Mendeley, the library itself, and then you select the paper that you want to cite. You can even select 2 or 3 papers. Just select one and hold Control and select as many papers as you want. When you click on that, it will automatically just cite those papers for you. And then when you come down here, you just insert bibliography, and it arranges it the way you want. Then you can come and change the style, any style that you want. Let's say if we are doing APA, as an example. So let's say we are doing APA. It will just put it in APA, and if you want to change to another style, you just click on this, it will change it for you. So it's very easy. It's very easy working with Mendeley. Mendeley is very, very easy. In fact, if you go onto the internet or on YouTube, just check how to use Mendeley. It will guide you on how to use it. So for me, I have used Mendeley for a long time. I've used Mendeley for a long, long time, and since 2012 actually, and it has worked very well for me. So you need to learn how to use at least a reference manager. That will summarize. That will simplify your work even more. If you need, of course, a bit of guidance on how to use, because sometimes maybe you might try and you get a bit of a challenge, then you can always reach out to TCC. Kevin is going to write the email address, and then maybe you can get somebody to also take you through it. So tomorrow, I find Mendeley, I don't know which one is easier to use than Mendeley, but I find Mendeley easier to use because I've been using it since 2012. So obviously it's about, I think, just the experience I've had with it. So Zotero still works just fine, but I've been working with Mendeley since 2012. So that, I think that gives you an idea of why I use it. But I still use Zotero, but I find Zotero a bit more complicated than Mendeley. I think it could be because of the number of years I've used Mendeley, but I'm not saying Zotero is difficult to use. How can you update the journals with no date with the referencing tool? So you need to have the date. So you can, even in Mendeley, you can still even update them manually, but you must have those dates. If there are no dates, then how do you know when the paper was published? Maybe if the dates are there, but the reference manager did not capture them, then you can easily update manually. I'm just going to show you on Mendeley. Let me just show you on Mendeley. Whoever asked this question, Ebrima. If you have these two, if you have, let me just give you an example here. So let's say you have a paper like this one, but then there are some details that are not there. You want to let's like this one. No, this one has. Oh, maybe it does not have a title. So imagine you can just come here and type manually. So what you do, you just open the paper. Oh, this one is not done. It's not in PDF, so we cannot open it. I'll look for one that is in PDF that we can. Most of my papers. Let me just. Okay, let me give you an example, maybe this one. So you have a paper, but then some of these details are missing. If you can open that paper and look for these details, you can easily just copy those details and paste them. So the title you can copy and paste. If you have the year here, maybe 2014, but it was not captured, you just come and put it here manually. Just put, you can easily just edit them on Mendeley. Mendeley allows you to even edit the authors, the title, whatever it is. And so as you edit that, you make sure you go under the type. So whether you are doing a book section or a case or a book or a journal article. So if it's a journal article, then it should give you all these position, all these spaces, and then you just come and you can open the document, and then you can now be filling them in manually. So yes, Mendeley allows you to edit manually. Alison, please go ahead.
Yeah, Doctor, my problem with the Mendeley that I may need some guidance is in any case I have
Can I come
done
in?
my work generally, and I wanted to extract some work from it. Perhaps I need to publish some work, and then I wanted to use the same references that I've already inserted in my general work. I want to extract those parts only. That is why I face challenges, because I have not tried, but I think the references are already generally arranged by Mendeley. Now removing them as part of the work to be put on another paper is a challenge to me. Thank you.
No, what you do, you copy the references again, and then you delink them, and then you just when you publish, when you paste them as plain text, then the reference, the how do you call it? Let me just give you an example here. So these are the this is the reference list. So these are the references, right? Alison.
Yeah, I'm saying.
I didn't get a question correctly, but fine. These are the references that you have used. So these are the references that you have.
Yes.
As an example.
Yes.
What is the question now?
My question is, suppose I have a side work, or I have extracted some work from the same work, and I only need reference number 1 and number 3, leaving out the other one. Should I first of all arrange the whole thing in my work especially in the thesis, then I copy and paste, or there's another way of after removing that part of the work that I need to publish, perhaps objective number 1, which was in the general work, I wanted to publish objective number 1 with its findings and the references only. So that it is here in a general reference list. How can I extract? Should I copy and paste, or there's another scientific way of making sure that only those references for objective ones can be removed and taken to the work to be published?
You will pick only the references. When you copy that, the parts that have only those objectives, then you go and generate another reference. You insert another bibliography on the new document. It will only bring for you the references that are in that section.
Okay.
So you just pick the section you want, take it to a new document, and generate another reference list. It will only generate references for the document, the citations that are in that specific section. It will not generate everything.
It's okay. Thank you. That's what I wanted to find out. Thank you.
Okay. Now we are, I think at the top of the hour, people
So
I know want
can I moderator,
yes.
I want to ask a question.
Yes.
Yes. There are some journals, when you cite them, for instance, let's say in PubMed and let's say Google Scholar, some of them you have to subscribe to be able to get them. So is there any way, is there any shortcut using Mendeley to be able to get those journals? I know of for Zotero, you can still get them, but for Mendeley, I have no idea. Is there any way that we can get journals that you need to subscribe to get access to using Mendeley referencing tool?
Even for Zotero, if a paper is hidden behind a paywall, I doubt if Zotero can allow you to go behind the paywall and get the paper. You can get the reference details, the details that you can use to reference that paper, even if you cannot access it. Those ones you can import them to. Yes, Alison.
Yeah, according to my experience using Mendeley, I have realized that unless you download the work you need and save it in the library, you cannot reference it using Mendeley. So those ones hidden behind the wall are very hard, because if you have failed to download, that means you cannot take it to the Mendeley library. It's going to be hard. So I don't think there's another way, unless perhaps you can register or you follow the terms and conditions of that journal or that website for you to access the paper, and then you can easily download. They can give you the chance to download, and then you can save in the library before you can reference them. Thank you.
I have seen with Mendeley, you can be able to import to your library, even if the paper is behind a paywall. Whatever you will not get is the PDF version of that paper. But all the other rubrics, all the other details that you need for citing that paper will come to your library. But you will not get the PDF. So you cannot open and read it, but all the other details you still can be able to cite. The only problem is, how are you citing it, even if you are not able to read it? But the details can come. If you use the Mendeley Web Importer, the Mendeley Web Importer can allow you to import the details of that paper into your reference, into your Mendeley, even if you are not going to access the full paper. But you can be able to get the citation details that you can use to cite that paper, even if you're not going to get the full paper. That one, I have had that experience. I have several papers that I cannot be able to access, but I have the details, so I can cite if I want. The only thing is, why am I citing them if I was not even able to read them in the first place? Yes, Ruben.
Okay. I think they asked about how you can access the paper through Mendeley, those Zotero. I think those tools, I never used them to get PDF before. When they can only give you details of the people, like you said, so it's exactly true. What I want to add now is that we have a way of getting papers that you need to subscribe. We have a website called Science Hub, SICHUP. We call it Science Hub. Any paper that they are not free, they are not open access, you can find them there. In Africa, it works for about sometimes when you travel outside, they put restriction on those things. But in Africa, everywhere in Africa, all my colleagues, all those that consult me, I advise them, they use it and work for them. And a lot of papers are there. Any paper that you want, just copy the DOI, document online indicator. Every paper have every good journal, they have a DOI, or you can copy the title, paste it into that website, and you get the paper for free. That's it.
Yes, I'm seeing Outa's hand is up, and then I think that, and then Dina, we are only getting those two because time is up, and then we can discuss more things tomorrow. Yes, Zuta.
Thank you so much, Dr. Please, I want to contribute on the side of the papers that are behind the paywall that you can't get the full paper. If you want to put in the Mendeley reference software, the portion that is available that we can get, the portion that is available and the reference details we could also copy that and put it on Word, then we convert it back to PDF so that we can upload it on the Mendeley software, because Mendeley software is capable of reading PDF materials. So I think if it's happening that we can still use a reference material, the Mendeley software to still do the referencing. Thank you.
Yes, Dina. Hello? Dina's hand was up. I have given her a chance to speak. But anyway, I think we are towards the end. I just want any final comments as we finish, so that we can talk about these other things tomorrow. I think time has also really gone. Any closing remarks, anything, and then I will allow Kevina to guide us on the next steps about tomorrow, and then we can finish it here. Okay, I will allow Kevina. I think we have exhausted what we wanted here. So Kevina, maybe you can guide us, and then we can stop it here so that people can also go for lunch.
Okay, thank you so much, Nicholas. That was day one of the scholarly communications training, and I hope it has been insightful for everyone. So we meet tomorrow at the same time, which was 9 a.m. East African time. I think that's going to be around 6 a.m. GMT. And in case of any inquiries, I have shared the admin email in the chat. So feel free to send your questions, but I'd recommend that you join the WhatsApp community group if you're not already there. If you're there, feel free to ask any questions that you may have regarding the research and academic process, just anything related to that. We also have a Slack channel which you can join, and your questions are going to be responded to. I have also shared an attendance form in the chat. I'm going to reshare it again shortly. So make sure you fill in your name for the day one attendance and also the needs assessment. Thank you so much, everyone. That's all. I'm going to be here for about a minute or two so that you can get whatever you need from the chat and then end the session. And thank you so much for your feedback. I can see the chat. Thank you. One last thing, the recordings and the slides are going to be shared after our session tomorrow. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, bye.